Welcome to another episode of the Four Horsemen. We've got kind of a double header of topics today for you guys. So first off, both of them have to do with, of course, Richard Lewis's reporting. But first off, we are going to be discussing the Pride Month, as Richard has dubbed it, Operation Pride Before the Fall, which is a great name on his Substack. Talking about Pride Month and the announcements of the Esports World Cup in Saudi Arabia. And secondly, following up on some of Richard's reporting, it will be talking about the DOTA Talent and their rates being cut by ESL, the Saudi-owned entity that is now at the heart of the Dota 2 scene. And joining us is Zyori, former Dota caster, esports personality, tournament organizer. Why don't you give them your history, Zyori? And we know, by the way, guys, Zaria's power is out right now, so
Yes.
we're working on limited tech.
Yeah, Puerto Rico. We're running on batteries and cell phones right now, AirPods. I'm sitting next to all the studio equipment, and it's completely useless without power and native internet. So we got like an hour and a half of daylight left. It's going to steadily get darker. There's going to be some really cool mood lighting coming. But no, it's a pleasure to be here. I got into esports 2010 with StarCraft 2, got into Dota like 2013, worked my way up, play-by-play commentator, running events, and then I was CEO of Moonduck Studios and agencies. We did Midas Mode and the Captain's Draft Minor on the official Valve circuit in like 2019. Those are our two really big claim to fame type things that you might have seen. Midas Mode 2 actually had a VR integration where fans could take over Roshan and target players and stuff. I think it was the only time that's ever happened, and pretty cool experiment. So we did a lot of fun stuff. We were sort of the grassroots community guys. And now all of them are, my co-founders are mostly doing just regular freelance Dota work. In 2021, I got into crypto gaming related stuff, blockchain gaming, for anyone that's heard of Axie Infinity. I worked there for a few years, and I put together the first $1 million blockchain gaming esports tournament, I guess you could call it. It was a card game, but still proper esports competition for blockchain gaming. So still a little early over there. I've now switched to kind of making games, but yeah, spent a good decade of my life just knee deep in podcasting, doing stuff like this, play-by-play commentary, desk hosting, interviewing, selling sponsors, organizing events, and all that stuff. I worked the International 5. That was the only TI I was invited to, but yeah, I've been around the Dota space for a while. So really glad to be here.
And
that was my favorite TI.
Zyori and I had
the AG one if people don't know.
Zyori and I have also had many, extensive conversations about talent caster rates over the years, and especially now that Zyori is out of esports, at least for the time being, can give some very, I think, candid opinions on the state of the Dota scene. I know you've also been passionate about responding to some of the Pride Month stuff that has been posted online, which is why I asked you in the first place, because you've been one of the more outspoken people on Twitter.
It's nice to have that freedom now and not feel bound by like the politics of your little esports bubble and having to please the right people and stuff. Now I can just wake up and tweet a little bit more like Richard, whatever's on my brain, I can just throw it out there. So I was flattered that you noticed and responded. It was pretty fun. 2019, I also wrote a book called Surviving Esports. I had a little moment called Sniff Sniff where I accidentally streamed myself. I left my webcam on, didn't have my pants on, did a little scratch and sniff. It was quite the dramatic event in like 2013, but I wrote a book about it and captured it. The Sniff Sniff chapter is published online for free if anybody wants to check it out. But it was a hell of a thing way back in the day. It was a big meme, like in the Heroes of New Earth age. Even just saying Heroes of New Earth, I think, ages you.
I mean, listen, you got to check the oil sometimes, dude. Like, that's just how that is, man.
I just appreciate you owning it.
Yeah, well, you got to. I mean,
I mean, in some ways, he actually used it as an advert for the book. Like, he made the book sound way more interesting to me. Like, a lot of people probably check it out now,
On Amazon, it was actually good old James Harding, my buddy Too Good. That was the first one that looked me in the eye and said, dude, just own it. Just own it. Like, yeah, it's funny and embarrassing. Just own it, and you're going to amplify. And he was totally right. I was working at Beyond the Summit before that, and they were the ones that told me, hey, don't tell anybody. Like, just don't acknowledge it, and it'll go away. And obviously, that just creates the Streisand effect. Sure. So that was a first-class ticket in how to handle your brand in real time on Twitch.
Amazing. All right, so Richard, let's start with you on the the Pride Month stuff. So you've been doing the reporting. So why don't you get us up to speed? Because we've actually, I think, seen a lot less Pride Month, especially from the teams, than we have in the past as a result of the Esports World Cup. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, look, so a little bit of background on this. Obviously, I am one of these people that has I've written and talked about and I don't really like the term woke. It's become a bit blasé. Some people are kind of like, I don't know, trying to reclaim it or whatever. But one of the things I'm always very conscious of is there's these like culture war word games where something will start off in earnest and it'll mean something, and then the opposite side will hijack it and subvert it, and then they'll keep constantly point to like, oh, they're using that term, it's a dog whistle for this other term, and it's like, it's just so fucking tiresome. So the term woke capitalism is essentially when corporations pretend to care about social justice values, activist causes, to make money in territories where it's profitable to pay lip service to those values and those causes. And then, of course, more often than not, it is a facade. And because they are, multinational corporations, they make their money by doing things that are contrary to those causes. For example, an example of this is Ben and Jerry's ice cream. They never shut the fuck up. About like, here's a Stephen Colbert's an anti-Trump ice cream fucking flavor. Here's like, the solidarity fist, we care about all of these things. And then it's like, okay, cool. I think it's great that you care about the plight of black people in America. I'm very interested in, helping you with that. But just before we have that conversation, you are aware you are owned by Unilever, and you are aware that they use child slave labor to get palm oil that you use in your products, and those children are black. So do those Black Lives Matter, I ask you, Ben and Jerry's? And the funny thing is, when you ask them that question, they can't answer it, because obviously if you believe that they do, but if they do, then why are you part of this huge multinational corporation that's using literal child slave labor and exploiting people around the world? And look, I also understand, I'm not a maniac, that it is very hard in the West, especially where we have very privileged lives, to be able to find something that is free from a supply chain that is tainted by bad labor or materials that are harvested in an unethical manner. But what you have to sort of then do is you can pick and choose your battles. You have to create a set of values that are consistent for you. I think the labor, in China, for example, for the assembly of computer parts is terrible. I still have all this sick computer gear that probably was put together by a child or some worker who's worked 30 hours without sleep and wants to throw himself out of a window only to be caught up by a suicide net, right? It's hard. I get it. But there are some things that you absolutely don't have to do that are totally optional. And for example, if you're a functional business that makes lots of money anyway, queuing up and you've raised money historically by saying you care about gay rights and saying you care about women's rights, you don't have to get into bed from a government to take a stipend from a regime that actually locks women up for talking about women's rights, that domestically infantilizes women and makes women have to have a male guardian approve them if they want a passport or if they want to do certain types of work. You don't have to get into bed with a regime that executes and persecutes gay people. You don't have to do that. You don't have to say, oh, hey, trans rights is core to our values, and then you're in bed with a regime that locks people up under cross-dressing laws and morality laws. You don't have to do these things because you're already making a lot of money. And yet what's happened in esports, and it's downstream from tech and corporations anyway. What's happened in esports is we have created a set of rules where I want to say from about 2015, 2016 onwards, They got to raise money right up until the pandemic, basically beating everyone over the head with gaming is unwelcome. Esports is unwelcome. We have a fucking white male chud problem, and everyone else is being rejected and pushed back on and hated. And nobody's safe in esports, actually, but we're going to do something about it. We're going to create safe spaces. We're going to create leagues and tournaments where everybody's welcome. And everybody got rich.
Any
Repeating
key
that.
pledge, all that shit as well.
Yeah,
all
exactly.
That stuff, yeah.
Everybody was making money off this Berkeley ideas bullshit that just permeated the rest of Europe. While most Europeans roll their eyes when an American talks about this stuff, but because the American marketing budget's so big and they own all the digital social media platforms that we use, you kind of have to go along for it. And so for about
free headline suggestion for you: from Berkeley to Burka. There's a free one for you.
Not bad. I'll keep that one in mind. So yeah, basically what we ended up doing was for about 3-4 years, we raised money for all these guys. By the way, I'm bisexual. Like, I'm in the alphabet club. I would never dream of playing the fucking card, because I think when you reduce it to a card to be played, it's quite instructive of how little you actually care about people around the world, people who would never be allowed to speak up about that status. But it's not like I'm some fucking tourist. It's not like it doesn't directly affect me, potentially. And then obviously 2019 pandemic, people got to raise money on that. They raised money by taking government loans that weren't really for them and laying people off, saying, oh, bloody hell, this pandemic's wrecking us, when we were still a growth industry through the pandemic. And then we've arrived here, a point where these dysfunctional businesses have to take Saudi money to stay afloat. And so what they're telling you is, listen, it was always our core values. We still love women. We still love gays. But you know what? Esports is for everybody, isn't it? And everybody does include tyrannical regimes that would kill gay people. So, now we kind of have to do this weird tap dance. And so my premise this June, my idea, my philosophy was, I really wanted to I wanted to make them feel ashamed of this garbage stance that they've adopted, because it is a lie. You cannot say like, caring about gay rights is a core value and then go and do business with a literal government regime that imprisons, executes, persecutes gay people. You can't. It isn't one of your core values, because I would never do anything against one of my core values. And I would wager we all feel the same way. I think if a core value is for sale, it isn't a core value. It's barely even a principle. It is a bargaining chip. And so what we've seen with these esports orgs, although not many this June, is historically they've done business with Saudi, business with China, and then they've gone, yeah, but we still love you guys. And just as the final point, the reason I feel so strongly about this is performative pride, performatively caring about LGBT causes. It does more harm than saying nothing. And I'll qualify that, because obviously we know that the way that this has been kind of presented by, what some people call the rainbow mafia in America and the American media, is there are some people that are really on the fucking edge. They're really on the edge, and they go, do we have to fucking hear about this for a full fucking month? And they're nominally okay people. They're probably capable of empathy and all of that other stuff. But they've been beaten over the head by these same dickheads with a cudgel about how they're bigots. You're a bigot. You're a bigot. You're a bigot. Shut up, bigot. Salute the rainbow flag, bigot. And they're like, for fuck's sake, like, I'm on your side, but can we just dial it down a little bit? Can you stop calling me a bigot? Can you stop calling me a Nazi? And so when you fucking come out and you do these things over and over and over and over again, people aren't going to listen. They tune the fuck out. And right now, I think we've won lots of ground, lots of territory for gay rights, trans rights in the West, across Europe, in the US especially. And what we really should be focusing the direction of the movement is, how can we help our brothers and sisters abroad that don't have the luxury that we do? And so what we should be doing with our incredibly privileged platform and our loud megaphone is, we should be looking to the places where, I don't know, there's 10 countries left on planet Earth that makes homosexuality punishable by death, Saudi Arabia being one of them. Think about how small a percentage that is and of countries. So why can't we focus our energy into trying through our socio-economic connections to make them revise their opinions? Well, Team Liquid are telling me it's impossible. You know, G2 don't want to talk about it at all. Fnatic are telling me, hey, it's no big deal because women can drive now. And I'm just sick of it. It's like, you have got to, if you want to take the money, that's your choice. I still don't think it's cool, but fine. But if you want to perform in June and dance and say, hey, happy Pride, and try and fool gay people into thinking you stand in solidarity with them when you don't, then I do have a problem with that. Because as I said, people are starting to tune the fuck out about genuinely important causes for actual LGBT people. And I am sick of esports orgs thinking they get to curate and fucking talk about what we need, what we want as a group. Because what I want is, I don't want performative allyship for 1 month out of 12. And there we are. So that's why Operation Pride Before a Fall happened.
By the way, along the lines of what you said at the end there, I actually think a very relevant point we haven't explicitly said on these shows before is, if you have to wait till the end of a certain month to tweet something, why are you tweeting that if that's what you believe in? It's a very obvious question to ask. Like, if there was nothing wrong with it, if you notice, Richard, that's my new take. My new approach to annoy these people is, I'm going to pretend like I don't know the reason why. So when they say something like, well, look, we couldn't get them to guarantee the safety of competitors, I'm going to go, why would you need to guarantee anyone's safety going to an event? I'm just going to keep asking like naive questions like that, because I actually feel like these are the questions these people should actually have to answer, by the way. Like, again, like you say, Richard, if you actually do care about this topic, this is the game that they're playing I'm so bored of. One, on the one that you just said there, here's a counter I want everyone to memorize, because you're going to hear that excuse of like, but women can drive there a million times. Here's the detail they won't tell you about that, because they only heard it from someone else and never looked into the story. Do you know the women who pushed for women to be able to drive in Saudi Arabia? They're in prison for that reason. So if that was a brilliant thing, why are they in prison? If they're so cool there, women can drive, why would they be in prison? Why would that activist be in prison and need, as far as I know, I think the ones who even aren't in prison or doing a caucus need like permission to leave the country or something really bad like that goes beyond the pale of what most people are going to think. And then lastly, I'll just say this. The thing I'm really, really sick of is this thing where it's like when you were listing, Richard, things you don't have to do. Here's what's mental, right? Even if you say, I have to work with the Saudis or I have to be part of this esports circuit, why do you then also have to get free props for things you don't believe in? Why is that part necessary? That's the part I really don't get. If I was doing something evil, I'd just shut the fuck up and get the money. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't then go, but I'm not doing the evil thing I'm doing. And so can I also have praise for that as well? Like, first of all, isn't that what inspires all these conversations of the backlash? And then secondly, it's also just gross. Like, you're pretending to care about someone where your actions show you don't, and then you want the credit for caring about them. And the reason why I bring that up is every one of these people messaging about the Saudi topic particularly does this thing where they imply what I think is incredibly disingenuous. They imply that taking the money isn't stopping them speaking out, that they can still have a voice. I noticed, by the way, in the moment that they're doing this, they have a microphone in front of their mouth or a keyboard, but they're not going to use this moment to speak out. They're just going to keep telling you that at some point they can speak out, which is weird, because if it was the point that the Saudis were cool with you just working with them, but then having your own opinion, just put it in this post too. Let's just get all the cards on the table. So what I would say is this. The reason why I think that's a very valid point to bring up is, I would ask this question. If they claim at face value they care about these topics and presumably want things to change, they want societal change in Saudi Arabia, I don't actually believe in good faith they do. I think at best they only care about people in their own country. I don't think they actually give a flying fuck about anyone in Saudi Arabia, by the way. I think they only care about the money coming from Saudi Arabia. So I would say this. What mechanism, if you don't boycott or speak out as a team or an org, what mechanism will get change happened? Because here's what I realized.
They say conversation.
That's what's gross, Richard. You're actually outsourcing the job of doing this to by definition, the least influential people, random atomized viewers of the event. So you won't turn down the money to play the event or not go to the event or tell people, I think what they're doing is wrong and I'd boycott it. But you then expect your fan, who in good faith you don't expect to tune out of the event and not support it, he's supposed to take the burden on of doing all this. And by the way, he by definition would have the least impact. One number going down on a Twitch view will never make anyone change the stream. actually, for real, yeah, if Team Liquid alone don't go, probably nothing, right? If Team Liquid, Cloud9, make the list, make the top 20 orgs list. If 18 of those orgs don't go, the tournament will still happen, but it will be very conspicuous. And in fact, by the way, you could even make a case, I think this is pretty true. If 18 out of the top 20 orgs in the world didn't go to one of these events or said, I won't work with them, that's like an instant viral news story around the whole world in media, by the way. That would be an enormous, that would be at BBC, everything, Reuters. Like, so it shows, by the way, if it actually was about getting the message out there, you would do the opposite to what you're doing now. And then lastly, like I say, by what mechanism will these people who have the least power and influence and actually have no direct connection in terms of viewers with the Saudis, what mechanism will they be able to influence the Saudis? Because the only people I'm aware of in esports who could influence the Saudis would be the people they need to work with. So logically, you were always the only person who could have done anything about this. Now, I still don't know if you actually could. I imagine they probably just tell you, go fuck yourself. But don't then pretend sort of like, don't worry though, I'll find a way to sort of get the message out. You're not. You're actually using your moment now, which would be the appropriate moment to say, here's what I think of what we're going to do, to actually explain to us that you're not going to do any of that and that your actions are just fucking bollocks, aren't they? So there's my take.
The strength was in the choice.
Yes.
And anything after that is irrelevant.
Well, it's also, I think I just want to clarify really quickly about the Saudi Arabian legal system, because that's what we're going to be diving into, at least when it comes to Pride, right? And, you know, the thing about this is that for you guys who don't know, Saudi Arabia does not have a penal code, which means that all crimes and their appropriate punishments are decided by independent judges.
Fucking King Solomon shit, basically. Like someone on the fly just decides what they think should happen. Right. Okay.
According to Sharia law. Yes. So that's why there's also plausible deniability from the Saudi side, because everybody could be like, they're getting better, guys. But because there isn't a penal code, and there hasn't been one, you can only point to past things that have happened. But because there isn't like a written law on the book that says, if you do, if you do, show affection in a gay relationship in public, that is a crime and this is the punishment. Everybody can always say, well, it's getting better, guys. It's getting better. Because it's just each instance is treated individually, right? And also that's why it is weird to say you could guarantee people's safety, because you obviously can't. You obviously just can't do that because you don't know what the effect of these things is going to be. So it is every case is in fact treated as an independent incident, and it is about Islamic law, right? And interpretation of Islamic law. That is what determines the crime and the penalty associated with it. So it is highly opaque, obviously extremely subjective, even judge by judge. So that's the problem here, is that it becomes very difficult to have these conversations because the Saudis themselves can be like, oh yeah, things have changed, but you don't know how they've changed or if they've changed, right? Because there are no written laws that are changing.
Only esports C-suite people could have the sheer fucking hubris to believe they're going to be able to somehow change Sharia. Like, are you fucking serious?
People that often, there's a strong correlation. The people that say that it's changing, it's getting so much better, guys, look at all these things, are also the ones that seem to be enjoying the protections of the Western societies where they hold a passport for, right? Sure. I have not seen many people that actually have to be in Saudi that say those same things that seem to match the talking points. And that's one thing that like I can't get out of my mind with these conversations.
Yeah, and the other thing is that when we talk about the Pride and the issues that are happening here, we have to understand the value exchange that is happening and what the Saudi Arabian government is doing, because there's a lot of just like fake there's like sort of fake debates that are happening about this, because the other thing is there's rampant whataboutism. What about the US government that's supporting Israel in the fight against Gaza? What about all the war crimes? Like, guys, the US government isn't directly running an esports tournament. If they do, we'll have a show about that too. Okay? Like, we will definitely have a show about that. But the thing is that this is a value exchange that is coming from Saudi Arabia.
We could be incredibly rude and disrespectful about the US government, but at least they won't put us in prison and kill us there. So that's a weird little thing to point out.
Well,
some whataboutism, just going to put that out.
Well, Julian Assange is in the chat.
The American military, though, has sponsored esports and been pretty
Yeah, of
direct.
course.
I mean, there have been many conversations around that, whether that's a
Yeah.
good thing, a bad
Yep.
thing, and it's kind of bounced right off. But you're right. Nobody got thrown in jail because of those conversations, right? We
Right.
were allowed to have those conversations, and that is a fundamental difference.
And people did criticize them, when the U.S. Air Force was sponsoring the MVP award, for example, at the 2018 CS major. I mean, these have been conversations, and like we welcome these conversations. We're not trying to say, well, what about the Saudis? It's like, no, let's have that talk too. You know what I mean?
The ultimate irony is, to this day, ESL Pro League is sponsored by the US Air Force. So actually, dickheads, let's just get them all at once. We can do that too if you want. We can get the Saudis on this one, then the Saudis with the US. We can do the whole buffet if you want. But I agree, that is just a bad example of whataboutism in it. Come on.
Yeah. So I mean, this is outrageous that you see these conversations online, and it's like, yeah, okay, we understand that there are other problems with other governments and other entities, of people who've been in esports, or people are like, my favorite one is when people talk to me and they're like, don't you fund the US by taxes? I'm like, yeah, but I would be put in jail if I didn't pay my tax.
Yeah,
By the way, what makes it clear it's a bad faith argument is they're never saying, like I just joked, well, since we're getting the Saudis now, let's also get the USF. Their argument is always the premise that's underlying it all is, so
like,
why are we
it's
doing
okay.
anything? Yeah, it's essentially,
it's
since we
okay.
let that happen, isn't this fine too? It's always that weird angle, which again, to kind of tie to what Zyori said, I notice it's all people who essentially just want to justify themselves watching the event and enjoying teams being there and players being there. I don't really think they actually sat down and thought, well, I have no problem with the US Air Force sponsoring a tournament, and I also have no problem with how Saudis treat gay, but they're not really thinking that. So I think it's actually a bad faith argument anyway in most cases. It's why it is whataboutism. It's essentially just like saying, oh, are you having an actually engaging, meaningful conversation? Let me just shit that up with some completely irrelevant stuff that's just going to sidetrack everyone and won't actually get anywhere.
What about you paying your legally mandated taxes? I'm like, well, I don't really have a choice. I'm an American citizen who has to pay American taxes, and I don't have an option to renounce my citizenship. You know what I mean?
Once you get into that,
But I did enjoy your blade.
I just have to say it because there's a bunch of people online on social media who are trying to junk up these arguments.
I've heard this a million times. I've heard this a million times.
So
every day the DMs are like that. It's either that or it's people in Arabic saying I'm a degenerate.
Oh, by the way, I'll tell you a more serious point that we never have addressed, though, which is actually one thing that's a very good point to make, Monty, because it spurs on this corollary point, which is if we're supposed to believe Saudi Arabia is this burgeoning landscape of change and ever, all potential is possible there. It's, in fact, there's another thing they tell you all the time, just like that thing they say about Iran. They go, it's only all the old people. Once they're out the way, all the young people love all the gays. Well, here's why you know that's not true. Because everyone in this chat who's ever addressed this topic will have had literal young Saudi people on Twitter get mad at you for the other way around. They're getting mad because why are you trying to influence their values? They'll even say that. They'll say stuff like, who are you, this Westerner, to come and demand that, like Muslim people change their... So what that actually implies, by the way, guys, is they don't want to change their values. In fact, they think their values as currently expressed via the law, which is the topic in question, are valid. They actually don't want Westerners. That's actually an angle no one ever brings up. We all pretend that it's just like, almost about to change. It's like 11:59 on the clock, as it were. It isn't. Some people there absolutely don't want any of this stuff. That's actually their angle. By the way, Zyori, jump in wherever you want, mate. We just never stop talking. Go on.
Well, I'm also worried in Puerto Rico. I think my ping is way worse. We're going island to island, so I'm always scared to talk over people. But I'll try to jump in more. Anyway, small anecdote. When I was CEO of Moonduck Studios, right, I can empathize with the capitalistic struggle. We had no money, right? We're always desperate to sell sponsors so that we could just run another tournament. And there was a moment where we thought, hey, the Saudis have a lot of money. Some people are doing this. Maybe we could try something here. Maybe 2017, 2018, right? So I have the preliminary phone call. There's some fixer guy who's this kind of Westerner, but also speaks Arabic, kind of bridge in between. And the thing that he says to me is, we can do anything. Money's not a problem. But number one, out of the gate, we have to do a sub-tournament that's all women so that the tournament can have this angle to show that the regime or the republic, whatever the word is, cares about women's rights, and so that we can make a narrative that shows that they really care about women's rights. And I remember just thinking about the specific vocabulary of, there's a lot of words like show and signal and display, and no words that really indicate like it's real or it's actually happening or that anybody gives a shit about it beyond just this PR angle that they're trying to build. And it was just strange that it was sort of this it wasn't this black and white, but like, hey man, we can do whatever you want. We can have a concert, we can throw a festival, but we got to make sure there's a woke angle out of the gate. That was like a prerequisite. And this is anecdotal, right? It's just one guy,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just one experience, but it gives me that background for when I hear Victor talk about like we're gonna have some discussions and things are changing. My gut says, man, that's a lot of change for a really old culture in like the last 5 years, and I just don't buy it, dude. That kind of change takes so long to happen, and it just reeks of virtue signaling. If I had to
Well,
summarize it.
it's also Zyori that the value exchange here is to not change. Like literally, if they were changing, why would they need to run this PR campaign in esports, which is what we call sports washing? So for those of you guys who don't know, basically the concept of sports watching is that you purchase sports. And remember, the Saudi Arabian government has now purchased basically the entire professional golf circuit. They've been buying up soccer teams all over Europe, investing in star players to come to Saudi Arabia to participate in their leagues, right? And the entire purpose of this is to give a positive PR campaign. And it is a campaign that loses a lot of money. Guys, we are in the middle of esports winter. Who among you thinks that this $60 million tournament is going to make money for the Saudi Arabian government? Right? This is a long-term play. Now, you might say, well, they're losing money now because they're trying to build a tourism industry that in 10 years, after in the 10th edition of the Esports World Cup, it'll be like the World Cup in Qatar where everybody comes there and it's a big tourism thing. And like they're playing the long game, right? Which they clearly are, by the way. But they want to own the entire circuit like they do with golf, because not only are they engaging in PR sports washing, they are also trying to diversify their economy toward tourism and toward media and sports entertainment, because they realize that there is a finite limit on the oil wealth that they have. And they are effectively, their economy is dominated by this resource that is being phased out and is limited in the first place. Even if it isn't phased out, the oil reserves will at some point in time go away. So this is very intelligent. Like they are very intelligent in what they're doing. And we'll get into how they are basically, I think Team Liquid is basically forced to do this, but I just don't agree with the fact that they're messaging the other thing at the same time. But guys, why would they be losing all this money? And the answer is so they don't have to change. It's so people think well of them. It distracts from these other human rights issues that they have. And all you're thinking about is this really impressive tournament. And I have no doubt that this is going to be a very impressive event, because they are going to spend so much money on it, because the purpose is to make Riyadh look sophisticated, look attractive, look modern. But if you are participating in this, if you are taking the money from the Saudi government, you can't change the culture. The value exchange is we get your legitimacy and your brand and you saying nothing, and we get PR in return. That is the value exchange. That is what you are getting paid for. So if you do these things, you're not being a fucking Robin Hood. You're not there being like, I'm taking the Saudi money and I'm using it to promote gay rights. It's like, no, you're not. You're not doing that, because they're getting the value they want out
By
of
the
you.
way,
And in fact, they are silencing you.
even the idea they're having a convo. Fuck out of here. What? So Victor sits down with Prince Faisal and goes, now, Faisal, you know that the arse can be. What are you talking about? There's no conversation ever happens. Like, that's why I keep saying that. It's like you said about just the show aspect. The performative aspect is them in the tweet saying we can still say things. There's no conversation ever happening. Like, even try and think of the mechanics of how the conversation would happen. So you're sitting down with the theocratic rulers of a whole country, who, by the way, can't even be politically deposed. They can only be murdered by their own family members and replaced. You're sitting down with these people who essentially, I hope I've made it explicit, have godlike power. They aren't a politician who has to, play to the crowd and watch out for optics. They don't have to do any of that shit. You're sitting down with this person and you're going to check notes, convince them Islam isn't literally true. Right? I'm going to go ahead and say, I think that's a bad faith suggestion. I don't think that's ever happening. In fact, I'll go the other way. Like Monty's alluding to, a point that people always get wrong about sports washing It's a bit like how people who've never looked into match fixing can only conceive of match fixing as you literally say to me, all of your team throw the game and here's money. Whereas we all know there's a million smarter ways to do it. You do things like you lose a map, but you still win the series. You lose a specific round or do one small incident. You do like a clever way of doing it. So in a similar sense, we're supposed to believe that these people ever sit down and do that. No, the sports washing isn't, by the way, to say Saudi Arabia is brilliant. It's to not say Saudi Arabia is evil. That's the sports washing. If you miss that nuance, you miss the whole thing. So actually, that's why it's in bad faith to suggest you're having conversations and influencing. That's what you're being paid not to do. You're literally being paid to never somehow castigate Saudi Arabia like certain people in this in that aforementioned org might castigate the state of Texas, for example. You will never do it like you would about Texas. In fact, the biggest joke of all is you do feel way safer saying it about any place in your own country than anything about their country. So I also think, like, even though they keep saying that, that's why I keep harping on, like, what conversation? When's it happening? What are you doing? What are the demands? What are you trying to push? What's the lever? There's none. It's all just fucking fake.
Here's the
I
other
heart so
thing.
much
Sorry,
to see
Zyori, go on.
Victor, to see Victor like really play down the effectiveness that a large reputable organization can have when it comes to boycotting. Boycotts oftentimes are full of shit, right? They're completely hollow. It's just some little Twitter campaign. There's a difference between consumer boycotts and business to business boycotts, right? And I do agree with Monty that from a business perspective, Liquid might be a little bit forced into this. But again, to circle back to what Richard said, if this shit was actually a core value, it is a big enough organization with a big enough pull that it only takes your leverage to get a couple other big organizations. And all of a sudden, we have what's called the tipping point, right? And then we know so many of these esports orgs are completely sheepish. Nobody wants to be first. Nobody wants to be last. Once the tipping point starts to occur, it all starts to come down like dominoes. But there does have to be that spark, that one group that's brave enough with the following and the clout to start that whole thing into motion. And it's fucking scary. And it's not necessarily Victor's responsibility to do that, but you have to pick a lane. You can't. It feels disingenuous to go out there and say boycotting's not an option. Yes, it fucking is. It could be an option. You just don't want to do it, and that's okay. But just say you don't want to do it.
Zyori, it is okay, but the thing is like, in my opinion, the real boycotting should be coming from the devs who ultimately have the power to grant licenses to this, right? Because I think it is unreasonable to ask 30 teams to boycott this event in the middle of esports winter, because we have to ask who is getting the most squeezed during esports winter. It's not the devs guys who are making money off of the microtransactions from the marketing that esports generates. It's the fact that the teams are reliant on sponsors and venture capital, both of which dried up, and now they are kind of forced into this. And look, we talk a lot about
what Victor did for 9 minutes. Just come out and say that in 30 seconds. We're forced to do it because of our
or say nothing.
I would respect the fuck out of that. Or say nothing. Right. That's always an option.
But I do think this is an interesting conversation, because I do think that Liquid, like I do sympathize with Liquid, because I think that they have been basically forced into this. And it's not the fact that Liquid needs this money. In fact, the base stipend of like $600,000 isn't really going to make a dent in Liquid's like $60 million of annual revenue of whatever it is that they do, right? Liquid is actually one of the best run from a commercial perspective, most well capitalized. They have an insane ownership group behind them that includes a bunch of traditional sports team owners, and like they have done very well for themselves. And Liquid can, in theory, afford to boycott this and give it up. However, the practical implications of that are basically, and they do say this, and I agree with this take that they have, which is that they can't get players and they can't continue to be a premier esports organization, because if
you might not be allowed to win awards if you boycott Melty.
Yeah,
maybe you can't even win an award anymore. That could be real too.
Yep. But it's like, if you're participating in this in esports, and you can't remember, Dota is a huge part of Team Liquid's legacy. Dota's enormous. Counter-Strike is enormous. They are TI winners. And when you have Team Liquid, you cannot sign Dota players if you will not allow them to play in this $5 million event in Riyadh. So you just can't have a Dota team anymore. And also, Liquid is beholden to their own investors. And imagine going to your own investors and saying, like, we're not going to take this free money, and also your investment value is going to go down because we can't field these divisions now, or we can't field them competitively. And Liquid has been a team that has been built off of tournament success. And yes, they also have done a lot of other businesses. You know, you've seen their merchandise crossovers. They were actually one of the first to do like licensing agreements for merchandise. They have their fan clubs. You know, they actually have a media studio that they you know, basically sign contracts with to create content for other organizations or even for publishers like Riot. So they've actually diversified their business very well. But what do we expect Liquid to do in this situation? It's not their job to start the boycott, as it were, you know what I mean? And even if they could do that or would do that, it's going to sign because other teams are really hurting for money, and there will always be somebody there to take free money. And then they just get replaced in Dota and they lose all of that.
Yeah, but okay, so I understand that from a business perspective, but here's the reality of the because this is one of the classic top three excuses these orgs will all use in unison. You could pretty much summarize the top three excuses as they drive now. If we don't accept, someone else will. And what do you want us to do? Just not exist because we can't afford to exist. These are the three top excuses. And so I've thought about these quite a lot. And I'll just say the excuse of if we don't accept, someone else will. Well, actually, that is an important aspect of you not choosing to accept in the first place, because not all orgs are equal. So you see, first of all, let's talk about it on principle. Right? Obviously, if it's a core value, you can't do business with this government. But let's say you're a cynical piece of shit. You say no in the first instance, because if it's a choice between Team Liquid and fucking Uncle Fartwell's dog shit bedroom org 99, right? Well, which one offers more value? If this truly is a sports washing exercise, you want to do as much of it with the wide reach. In fact, they financially reward you for having a wide reach and posting things out using the hashtags and doing your undisclosed promotion for the Esports World Cup event, framed as very genuine and real updates about your org. So at the end of the day, like, I mean, first of all, it would just be smart business to say no in the first instance. Right? Play a little bit hard to get, guys. Maybe you can get a bit more money out of it, because if you believe your brand has value, then there should be a little bit of a, well, do I want to get into bed with the Saudi Arabian government for this amount of money with all the shit we're going to get, but it might actually be worth it for this amount of money. There wasn't any haggling, Monty. There wasn't any haggling at all. It was like literally before the Saudis had even opened the door, the lube was on the fucking table and they were climbing under the fucking duvet. They were ready for a night of fucking loving.
Because
Believe it.
the trap had been set, guys. You know, when all of the major developers, when Epic and Valve and Riot and everybody is licensing their IP over, and here's the fact. You know, we can just talk about things we know behind the scenes. Everybody knows which direction the wind is blowing. You know, we're the only ones here on LFN who actually talk about this, but the direction of the industry is towards Saudi consolidation. It's not just going to be the Esports World Cup, guys. ESL runs
Olympics.
the entire circuit. Yeah, you know what?
They're going to run
Here's
the
other thing.
Olympics. Going to be the total circuit.
Here's the other thing. It's like, you know, all of the publishers and all of the developers, they want less and less to do with running their own esports because they have failed to do it. Like Liquid probably knows that the writing's on the wall and that LCS and LEC and League of Legends might eventually be run by that. We also have to say that Liquid historically has very close ties to ESL. I mean, it was Liquid that was one of the principal architects of the Louvre agreement with ESL. And so this is the side that they've always been on. They've always been on the ESL side.
Just before we get down this road, though, I want to come back to the thing about boycotts, right? Because, first of all, one of the things Victor said in his video, and this appears, and remember, Steve has co-signed it and said, I agree with everything in that video. And so, right, one of the things they said was, we reached out to human rights organizations. And they said to us, actually, a boycott wouldn't help because you would lose your voice, you would lose your seat at the table, and don't ever surrender that. So first of all, I am writing to those organizations to get on record what their opinion about boycotts are, because it's news to me that boycotts don't work, considering historically, boycotts are one of the few things that actually do work. Sign a petition, people wipe their arse on it. Go out on the streets with the signs, in come the fucking police with the fucking truncheons.
I mean, dude,
right?
countries do it. They're called sanctions. We're doing it right now to Russia.
I was just going to bring it up. So it's like if boycotts don't work, what the fuck what were we doing with Russia in the what unprecedented economic sanctions to try and squeeze them out because we believe that the invasion of Ukraine was a unconscionable evil act. So everyone around the world went, right, fuck Russia, you're not getting yours then.
You notice, Richard,
we're going to sanction you.
No one goes, yeah, but what about McDonald's? Don't they need to make money in Russia? No one ever says that.
No,
have you ever noticed
no
that?
one ever says that.
It's weird on the topics people actually care about. No one would ever bring that argument up. In fact,
Yeah.
it would even be known what a fucking offensive argument that would even be to put forth in bad faith, for fuck's sake. No one even tries that one.
For fuck's sake, just think about how ridiculous it is that we're talking about suddenly the same people that tell you must boycott Chick-fil-A because it's evil anti-gay chicken or something. Fucking tell and don't ever put it on catering or we won't work your events.
Yeah.
I've seen some mad shit like that, right? And they're the same people that are now telling you boycotts don't work. And actually, we have to sit round this table where there is one voice. It is the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman himself, who is the chairman, and you will do everything he says and not a single thing otherwise. So I resent this. And then second, the worst lie of all that Victor told in that video and Team Liquid have told and what they're all telling, and I'll get into some more specific examples a little bit later on, right, is this idea of forward progress, forward momentum in Saudi Arabia. Because obviously, according to a lot of the imams, they don't like some of the stuff Mohammed bin Salman has given over to his people. Now, understand, domestically, what he is doing is to avoid an Arab Spring-style uprising.
Right.
It has nothing to do with suddenly he just comes out and goes, yeah, obviously, like, women should be able to drive and everything. No, he has looked at what happened in countries like Iran, and he has gone, yeah, let's not let that happen.
Also, we point out the US allies as well. Like, in fact, they're literally the ones fighting in the Yemen shit now, of course. So,
no, well, I mean, like, literally right now, may you live in interesting times, as they say. The Saudi Arabian state are imprisoning people for speaking out against normalized relationships with Israel. So we're in fucking bizarro world right now, geopolitically. But like, what I will say is this. If Victor wants to sit there in a video and say we are making forward progress, and while historically Saudi's been bad, they're taking steps in the right direction. Well, why then was it the worst mass execution in decades? Why was that carried out in March 2022, where they killed 81 men, over 50% of them just so happening to be Shia Muslims, because it was also a kind of modest style of, the Sunni and Shia ethnic cleansing stuff that goes on there, right? And what were their charges? Deviant lifestyles. That's March 2022. Then let's fast forward to August.
That's the other thing. They don't explicitly say gay. They just say stuff like you live like deviant. They use euphemisms, right?
Like very generic terms,
Yes. In amongst those people that were executed, there were young adults that had confessions beaten out of them. Right? It is a complete disgrace. That's March 2022. You fast forward to August 2022. Salma al-Shihab. She was a foreign student who went to Leeds. She tweeted some things about women's rights and how she wished the regime would change. She's imprisoned for 34 years. And when she gets out of prison, when she will be 68 years old, she is not allowed to travel abroad for another 34 years.
Fucking hell,
right? Right? That was August 2022. Then also in August 2022, the case of Noura bint Saeed al-Qahtani. 45 years in prison for tweets and criticism of the state under counter-terrorism and cybercrime laws because she disrupted the cohesion of society. And then we get to May this year, Manahel al-Otaibi, the Saudi women's rights activists, for the crime of not wearing an abaya in a shop, going out in dungarees and speaking out about women's rights, imprisoned for 11 years. So when is this forward fucking progress happening, guys? Because I'm not seeing it. And I don't care if you show me a picture of a woman in a burqa driving a fucking Fiat Uno. This is not how a civilized regime operates. And what I hate about these people in esports is you are literally co-signing this. When you record your face, your voice, with your name on it going, no, we are making forward progress, you are literally saying, forget about these women who are going to die in prison. Forget about these gay people that are being executed for who they are. That is what you are doing. You're beyond a useful idiot. You are state apparatus. And this is why, like I say, I know these people have no mechanism for shame anymore.
Yeah.
This isn't just your little performative virtue signaling. You are literally condemning these people.
Yes.
It is outrageous. It is outrageous. It angers me. It should anger every esports fan. And I don't care how timid or meek you appear in your little video. And it's complicated, guys. No, it's very fucking simple. Those women should not be in prison. Those men should still be alive. If you don't believe that, you are gone.
By the way, I'd even push back against what Monty says. I think you're being, as usual, Monty, you are being too generous to the people you're representing. So because you like Team Liquid / some of the people, you're acting like what they said even approaches being reasonable. Here's why it doesn't, right? First of all, think of the mechanism of how they're framing whether they would take action or not. So they're implying like, yeah, but what's the point of the boycott? And do boycotts even work? No. Wait. This is about your values. It's not about boycott. It's not about literally what happens to Saudi Arabia. It's about, can you live with yourself? And is this what you believe? If you say a strong core value of yours is esports is for everyone and we welcome all genders, sexualities, then by definition, it doesn't matter whether a boycott will work, whether you could have any effect. You couldn't be a part of this then. That's it. That's either your value or it isn't. What is this thing of like, yeah, but then I'm supposed to stop being esports? Yes, if this is an incredibly important human value, actually to not play video games sounds like a very reasonable deal. I don't know about you, but I would snap take that deal. Like, this isn't even my values. And I didn't take the money for this company for investment purposes because I actually do think, again, it's too on the nose, isn't it? There's not even, they haven't even given me, ironically, a reach around of putting it through 5 different companies. It is the guy who, on the one hand, just finished shooting the kid in the face, who, with the other hand, hands me the bag of money. That's too close for me. And if it isn't close for you, then I can tell you, by definition, your actions say you don't care about this value. Because apparently your values are even attenuated based on whether or not you can achieve your goals. Like, I don't get that, mate. Like, if someone said to me, Thorin, do you want to come to this video game tournament? And let's pick a random thing, right? Let's say I just prefer Coke over Pepsi. Well, then you know what? If you've only got Pepsi there, that's probably not a deal breaker. Maybe I can still go. If what you said is, I'm holding a tournament here, and by the way, don't you really like, I'd make up something random, don't you really like dogs? Yeah, I kill dogs regularly. I'll stop doing it a bit if you join me, but do you want to join my tournament? I'd go, well, if I don't come, will you not kill the dogs? No, I'll still kill them anyway. I think I'll just won't come either way. I wouldn't go, oh, well, in that case, I'm in then. Fuck. I mean, if you were going to kill them anyway, someone's going to get that money. No, it's not. When you actually make it, by the way, that the hinge point is the people that Richard talks about, going to prison, being killed, suddenly all these arguments, they're the whataboutism, mate. They don't work. Like, notice how they don't ever hit the spot when you actually put it directly against what you think is happening.
Things that orgs have boycotted over, right, in esports that I'm aware of. Because remember, they used to have that stupid thing. What was it? Was it the fucking G8 or whatever? Remember
Yeah.
Right? So
10, 15 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, it was like all the big esports orgs, right? Many of whom are now just in bed with Saudi.
Yes.
The old school ones, right? And beyond, we've had threats to boycott tournaments for non-payment of prize money, right? So you'll boycott over your paper.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense, reasonable. Got nothing against that. We've had threats to boycott over admin decisions, inconsistencies.
Yes,
that was a big one. That's happened on a number of occasions when a big org thinks it hasn't had the break or the rule book hasn't been followed, and they go, oh, well, we're never coming to your tournaments again. We've had orgs, literally, this is no joke now, some of these orgs who are taking money from the Saudi Arabian state, who are literally publicly going, what are you going to do? They threatened to boycott tournaments because they didn't like things me and Duncan said on an analysis desk. Couldn't handle the spicy banter, couldn't handle the jokes, couldn't handle having their players compared to certain Lord of the Rings characters. Didn't like it. Threatened to boycott entire tournament circuits. So someone has to come to us and go, can you dial down the humor a little bit? So jokes were worth a boycott. We've seen player action, by by the way. We've seen players fucking threaten not to go to events if their hotel doesn't have a PC in it, if they don't get business class flights. You know, some people have boycotted entire tournaments because it's like, listen, there's just too many events right now, so we're just phasing yours out because we've got a business relationship with this. We had the LCS player walkout. Players were willing to walk out of a league against notoriously difficult Riot games so we could keep collegiate jobs that maybe arguably don't have to exist in the first place. So it's interesting because this collective action I see on the ground in esports is over some, you know, I wouldn't say these are petty or trivial issues, but they're petty or trivial by comparison.
Life or death.
Yeah, to like actually
Yes.
imprisoning or executing gay people or women for simply trying to get equal rights in their country. And not only does nobody care about that, the executives come out and actually do exactly what MBS would want you to do, which is to say it is that they're making forward progress, try not to think about it. If you see any BBC News stories, I mean, them wacky journalists, can you even trust them, eh? You know, I'm sure it's complicated. I'm sure there's reasons why those women were imprisoned under terrorist charges. You know, and they're going to literally do that to you now over something like this. When meanwhile, if ESL were to come out and like not put computers in the room, the players would be outraged. Or if they were to cut their prize money or to, you know, whatever it would be, there would be a boycott then. You absolutely believe it. And I know that because I've been in esports 20 years and I have seen these orgs flex power when it's about money, but you won't do it for principles. And again, that's fine. It's just admit they're not your principles. Just don't lie to me.
Yeah, it's the hypocrisy that's so galling. You know what I mean? It's like, if you're gonna take the bag here, then just nakedly take the bag and say nothing about this, and don't present yourself as having these principles. I think that's what's so frustrating about this situation. And honestly, Richard, based on your reporting, like, most people seem to have gotten the message. Like, Riot didn't. FlyQuest made an appalling statement that was basically like, our players need to decide this. Which,
by the way, let's after this make your point, but let's talk about that topic because obviously Liquid implied something similar, Monty. Let's do that one next.
Yeah. I mean, basically, like, it's just that these teams are starting to say, well, if the players are uncomfortable, then they're not going to go. Which obviously, especially in team games, is a very risky thing to play because if one player,
I actually have a big point I want to make up. Should I just do it now?
Yeah, go.
The quick version basically goes like this. I also don't believe that's a good faith statement. As in the short term, I do. Like, if you're in Team Liquid or FlyQuest today, and literally the Esports World Cup is months away, and you say to them, I'm not comfortable going, well, you don't even have to actually be LGBTQ, but we could just be outraged by this. You could actually be a moral actor yourself who just doesn't want to be involved with this shit. Like Twists famously, I don't believe he's ever said he was LGBTQ in any way. He just said he didn't want to work with Team Falcons because he didn't want to be involved with that shit. By the way, sadly, I do think that will probably come back to bite him in about 4 or 5 years, depending on the ownership of all the team orgs. But anyway, we'll put that, and where some of the future majors will probably take place. But let's say you do that, right? Here's why I don't believe it's a good faith statement. Because that only works if we accept the premise it's only the Esports World Cup. There's one tournament a year, and it happens in Riyadh, and as long as you don't want to enter that one, cool. Just be in the rest of our circuit, right? One, how does that work in a team game? It doesn't. It automatically doesn't work. By the way, even worse if you're the star player, how could Arteezy not be in like what Shopify or whatever the fuck team he was on? If he doesn't attend, by the way, one, there's a waste of time you attending. He's your best player. And then two, that's such an incredibly important player and highly paid player and highly sought after player that you're not just letting that guy go. This year, I'm not doing that event. Or is the 4 events there next year? Well, I'm not doing those 4. Oh, eventually, the whole circuit there. Can I just keep getting my massive salary and being really world famous and work for your team, but never attend any events? Even though, again, logically, the same arguments you've used yourself as an org to attend the event. Well, how can we not attend? That's where the money is. That's where the game is. They would all now apply as to why you would, by definition, have to let me go or not re-sign my contract. So I also believe what they're not telling you there is not only would you privately be outing yourself like, I don't want to go, but also you've essentially, like, you've started almost penning your death warrant as a pro player. Like, eventually, logically, you're going to have almost no one left to play for. Because, like I say, if they're going to increase the number of tournaments, number of events, eventually everything's going to be there. So if you don't go, you by definition, in the same way as Team Liquid claim they can't be in esports if they don't do this, you can't be in esports, and you can't be in esports for Team Liquid or FlyQuest. That just seems logical to me.
Yep. Completely.
Psychology to what those aggressive startups do, where they say, hey, unlimited vacation, but our culture is to work through the weekends. you're
Right.
gaslit into thinking that you can take off unlimited time. But the moment you say, hey, I'm taking a 3-day weekend when no one else does, guess what? You're judged differently. It's secretly held against you. And it's moving the goalposts of normality and
Yes.
selling you on a vision that sounds really awesome, but then the execution in reality is completely different. I agree with you completely. From the player perspective, it's the illusion of choice,
But
like the truest definition.
it's just the buck being passed because again, like, look, I think this is all being conflated. We're spending a lot of time talking about Team Liquid, but the thing is, and like, I don't like the message that Team Liquid put out, but at the same time, I genuinely believe that Victor is one of like the best
He is.
owners in the scene.
Yeah,
Like,
but
I
that's
think
why
he
he's getting wrecked now, Monty, because
I know.
he wouldn't be the name we'd even mention out of choice, but we're mentioning it because he put himself in the targets.
But
In exchange for the money, he put himself as the poster boy of this topic. So, like at the end of the day, guess what? You know why I don't feel sorry for you, Victor? That massive sack of fucking money next to you with all the blood on it. Go and count those and go to sleep, dickhead. If you have a hard time sleeping, just count off those Benjamins you can't.
But I really think that the teams have been forced into this because I think people are not really realizing the cunningness of the trap that was laid, right? And that you
By do you know what I would actually do if I was a team, Monty? I'll give you a very real suggestion that I would do. I would play a game called Checkmate with the game dev. I would go as a massive org, like LCS type, all the owners, and I'd go to Riot Games or Blizzard if it's a StarCraft thing, or obviously Valve for Counter-Strike and Dota. And what I'd do is I'd go to them and say, hey, we're doing this privately. Spoiler, we will be leaking this to journalists, but we're just going to come to you and we're not comfortable working in areas that don't respect basic human rights. And so basically we'd like you as the developer with, you know, your infinite money glitch that is the fucking game. How about you create something so we don't have to go and do that? And if you don't, here's the soft power. We'll just leak it to journalists that you didn't give a fuck. So you don't have those values anymore. Because here's the thing, Monty, I'm with you on this angle. Team Liquid doesn't have a very good way to generate revenue right now, especially if everything eventually becomes Saudi. You have to work on some level, right? But the game dev has the infinite money glitch.
That's what I'm saying. But this is the disappointing thing is that basically because of statements like FlyQuest and Team Liquids, it's really distracting from the core issue, which is that the easiest way to stop this is simply for the developers to not give licenses. This isn't like golf, guys.
Make a $500 RE skin for not killing gay people. That would be a great fucking skin to buy, you know. I'd flex that one all day long. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. So, like, the thing about this is that if we actually look at who has the power in this situation, when they started Live Golf and they took over golf, nobody owns the intellectual property of golf. Literally, nobody can stop them from doing that. But you know who can stop them? Epic, Riot, Valve, because they have to give or sell licenses to these tournaments in order for it to work. And it's not only that they're giving it. You'll notice when Riot made the announcement of the Esports World Cup, they did not say, they said, we don't have anything to do with the administration or operation of this event. We're just giving the we're just providing the license. They did not say we are giving them the license. Almost certainly they are being paid millions and millions of dollars in return for this license. Because if I was them, I would have said, yeah, on this one, we're just not accepting money for the license because we don't want that money. The fact that they didn't say that is highly suspicious. So we don't know whether the licenses are being sold by these publishers.
Also, and we all know, Monty, there's a million ways you get around it. Like, for example, if you don't want it to be expressed that you give them the license, you just charge them like 100K for the guy who comes and sits next to the server. Or so. There's a million ways you can do it, like politically, to get the money, of course.
And also, at least in Riot's case, they actually do have to provide support because they have to provide support for the tournament realm for the tournament to even happen. So somebody from Riot during that week off has to be there kind of manning the servers. Typically, they send the tournament realms to the event, so it's LAN-esque. So unless they're planning on playing on ping to Berlin or something like that, which would be, I think, the closest tournament realm, Riot does necessarily have to provide support because they always have to protect their servers because they don't want the code of the game to get out into the wild. So they have to send Riot employees and security teams. This is how it works to do Riot events, right? And so the thing that needs to happen is the developers and the publishers need to say no, but they're not going to say no because here's what they see, guys. They see an opportunity, which is, hey, we have this marketing wing that produces us a fuck ton of money. We know that because otherwise, why would Riot have like done Valorant esports after League of Legends when they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year on esports? They must have some return, right? But we know that return isn't necessarily coming through sponsorship because a lot of the sponsors have gone out of esports. So in return, all that's happening is they know the microtransaction money that esports generates. No one else does outside of the company. And they see an opportunity here to say, well, we could offload all of our marketing expenses, but still control our marketing message and see the same return. So here's an opportunity to do that and increase profit for our company, which is why they are doing these things. It's why they want to work with ESL that's owned by the Saudi government, because they're basically cutting costs at no price. And in the long run, they want to sell out all of this stuff. They get the licensing fees. They don't have to worry about the headache of producing esports events anymore. That's ESL and the Saudis' problem. You know what I mean? And so really the criticism should be with the developers. And like I'm pissed because all of these statements that are being made are just smokes. They're providing perfect smoke screens, so nobody's actually criticizing Valve. Nobody's criticizing Riot. Nobody's criticizing Epic. Like, you should just say, we could end this tomorrow if these companies were just like, no, you don't get the license. Goodbye.
Yep.
Like, I like this argument. So is Victor at Team Liquid beholden to Valve and these other developers to be stuck in this situation where he has to do lip service for the other side? Because I actually like this argument. And if Victor had made that same video and said, you know what, this is fucked, but we're squeezed, and the developers are the ones with the power to actually change this, and we need to rally to push them to change this. I can't sacrifice my business and my players because I'm stuck in the middle. That would have been an awesome like rallying cry to, I don't know, establish some fucking honest normality of what's actually happening here instead of gaslighting boycotts as a concept and providing some general lip service that some magical change is happening that is not happening. That's like, what am I missing in this equation? Why couldn't he just come out and say that?
Well, one thing you're pointing out there, though, that I do think is the problem is, in a way, you're pointing out the emperor has no clothes, right? Which is, even though they're going to say things like, well, we have to be involved with this, they can't then put in what would be the square brackets that I, the journalist, would put in, based, for example, if people saw my report about the LCS and how much money they'd spent on salaries versus how much revenue they made. If you don't know, there was like a gap of like 100 mil or something insane that they were missing, like that they'd essentially all bled all these teams to pay these people to play League of Legends. If you said, look, I already lose all my fucking arse doing esports anyway, we barely survive, and like you say, it's not like I might have to, I will literally have to leave esports. I have to close Team Liquid down if I don't do it. If you do that, I agree with you. You can absolutely shift the onus back to the game dev, because then it becomes the case of like, hey, Valve, hey, Riot Games, why don't you provide a space where this guy doesn't have to make this dreadful choice in order to continue? I agree with you. That'd be a good one. The problem is, though, I just feel like all these orgs, that's already the white lie. They've already agreed to all tell forever, which is like, no, media, this is all awesome. It's just like sports. It's huge. It's like signing Cristiano Ronaldo. It's like all that shit all over again. So sadly, I feel like, even though it might be a bit of a rhetorical question, I feel like that's why it doesn't happen, you know?
Yeah. And it's like, you know, they don't even point out,
point,
like
though.
in some of the other, you know, instances while you're bringing up other sports, because obviously Saudi aren't just, it's not just esports, you know, it's everywhere. But it's like, you know, we're already getting footballers that went over for the Saudi exodus already leaving.
Oh, that Jordan Henderson one is mental, mate, isn't it? Like, if people don't know, I'm a Liverpool fan, so I think that is insane. If people don't know, the captain of Liverpool Football Club was a player called Jordan Henderson, right? He was a very popular player, and he was a player who went out of his way to flex all, like, LGBT allyship and stuff. He was one of the people, like all the England players, who claimed, like, we're gonna wear that pin no matter what, except they all bent the knee instantly when they found out they get, like, essentially disqualified from the tournament. He went there, didn't even do like a whole year, and he's already left them back in the fucking Premier League. Like, that's like so shameless, it's mental, Richard.
Yeah,
That's
well,
so
well,
shameless.
the thing is, a lot of the players that have gone out there have said, "Oh, actually, you know, we weren't prepared for the reality of living in society. Our wives don't like it here.
No,
You know, our
exactly.
girlfriends and wives don't."
Yep, they
So
can't
they're
do all the
already,
shit they used to at home, mate. Yeah, of course.
yeah, and of course, you know, I mean, listen, some players are absolutely gonna be more than happy out there and happy to promote it, and it fits their lifestyle, and that's fine, and all this other stuff. But you know, I mean, look, there are some realities about a partnership with Saudi and what they expect and how it's going to color your events. And it's like I said, I mean, it's almost academic at this point, but this has created an insane level of conflict of interest, one that cannot in any resolute way be resolved. When you consider Valve have said you're not meant to have any entanglement with business entities, right? If you want to compete at the majors, and we've got 30 of the world's biggest esports orgs all taking money out of the same pot in exchange to go to an event and promote that event.
Well,
And
also
then,
Falcons is, probably has Richard. Nobody
yeah,
has actually figured out whose Falcons investors are, right?
Well,
Which
they're
is
not obliged to
probably
reveal it,
the
so they don't have to, yeah.
CEO has said publicly, or again, the CEO on paper has said publicly that our investors don't want anyone to know who they are, right? And they prefer to be private. And
He
then you
even
go,
said that
okay,
as if to put your mind at ease. Like, they just don't
yeah,
want anyone to know they
yeah.
are.
And then you
Well,
but
said,
like
well,
there's
are
a
any
reality
of
where,
them are any of them from the
I know.
PIF? And then
I
he
know.
said, oh,
or
well,
just
none of them have more than 5% in the PIF. So yeah, from the PIF,
more than
then, yeah.
5% is like $50 billion, of course.
But
That's the
but it's
way they
also
use all these
disingenuous.
tricks. So,
They're
like, look, they only own
sponsored.
5%. It's only 5%.
They're sponsored by a state-owned entity.
Love it.
They're sponsored by a state-owned entity, that the Saudi telecommunications company. So it's like, listen, the levels of conflict of interest around all of this are off the chart. That's before we even get into the fact that all of these orgs are also in a business partnership with ESL until the end of 2025. So, like, I mean, again, yeah, obviously, what Valve would have to do to be totally consistent would be, right, you're not getting any licenses to run any of our tournaments. You don't get to do Dota. You don't get to do Counter-Strike. And by the way, any of the orgs, you want to come and attend those events, which are going to be run by other tournament operators, if you can't prove you're not all in bed with each other, taking money out of this one big pot, essentially PIF money, because I don't care how many shell companies or non-profits you put it behind, we all know where the money's coming from. If you can't prove you're not doing that, then you can't attend these tournaments either. The only way you move the dial with these fucking greedy esports owners is through cash. And the only thing that might think about, oh, fucking hell, do we really want to do this, is if you took their sticker money away and you took their TI money away and you took their battle pass money away. If you did that, all of a sudden, there might be like, listen, we were conflicted earlier, but now we realize actually, yeah, this is what the Saudi Arabian state is doing is wrong, and we're back to the open circuit. Worship us, we're good again. So it's like, but the developers aren't going to do that. You create an international incident doing that. You're a games developer. You want to sell your game in every country. How can you take a stance on Saudi and then do business with China? So business in Russia.
By the way,
You know
along
what I
those
mean?
lines, this is like a little bit of a tangent, but it's still within the same wheelhouse. I actually have a different take, probably to most people, on that Esports Awards thing, where when the Esports Awards, it was announced that they're partnering with this, like the Saudis, essentially, the Esports World Cup people, for 3 years. Here's what's weird about that. Notice they didn't say we bought the Esports Awards. We're only partnering with them. So here's what's weird. To me, that's not as bad as like buying ESL, for example. So one thing I found very curious, I'm going to keep my eye on this in the next year or so, is I actually think I'm going to take a very cynical reading of this, because sadly I know a lot of people in the esports industry. So I'll give you a very quick analogy. Richard will know this. Back in 2019, a whole bunch of CSGO talent, the biggest casters in the world, came out and they said collectively through an article as sources, we haven't been paid by StarLadder, which is obviously one of the biggest like CISTOs at the time. But at the time, StarLadder was nowhere close to like an ESL. I would even say like Blast was arguably bigger. But you have to rank it up. But the point is they'd never be the biggest one. Now, the reason why I actually didn't like that is because even though I agreed with their premise, like they hadn't been paid on time, what they didn't mention was the reason they were doing it about StarLadder is because they barely worked with StarLadder. They did the odd event with them and they were the biggest casters in the world. What they didn't tell you, which is inferred that this isn't going on when you only speak out against StarLadder, is ESL used to take even longer to pay you back then. But because ESL had like 80% of the circuit and everyone wants to work with ESL, no one would say it about ESL, but everyone would put the fucking boots in on StarLadder and be like, this is unacceptable. I get the same vibe about this exact Esports Awards topic, because all these people who've said nothing about Saudi ownership of EFG or all these events, magically, a load of them went really hard on this awards topic. And like, hey, I can't be involved with this. This is unacceptable. Well, here's what I want to know, dude. You better not ever appear on an ESL broadcast. ESL's owned by them, you fool. This is just a fucking partnership for 3 years. Like, how would it ever make sense that you can't work with someone who partners with them and does an award show once a year, which, by the way, it might not even be in Riyadh every time, but you can go and work with the company owned by them who do all the things you're against? Like, that, I'm at the moment, I'm just having to speculate because we haven't had enough time for anyone to work or not work an event, but there was a lot of big names. Actually did seem like suddenly they got fucking found a pair when they reached down there. But I want to see if they actually live up to it, because I hope it's not like I say about this Starlight example, you're sort of using that as your like whipping boy to not have to address the fact that you are on the bigger scale going to work with the Saudis, but you pick like the one convenient one. Because here's the thing, ultimately it's the same reason why they could make statements in Team Liquid about Texas years ago, Richard, because there's no cost to it.
Yeah,
No one in Texas is banning you. You're not going to get fucked up by the US government. So similarly, you don't go to one award show. That feels like, actually, it sounds like you're making a big statement, but if you end up still working with the Saudis, that's fake in some ways to me. So I want to see what happens with that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they end up holding the line, but I'm a bit suspicious personally.
I do think that there's a difference in terms of abstraction, because I think the issue with the Esports World Cup is that you are actually going to Riyadh to make Riyadh look cool, which is the actual sports washing element of it. Because remember, they could have, if it was just about making a giant tournament, they could do it anywhere. Like, they don't have to do it in Riyadh. They could do it literally anywhere on Earth. And like, I do think that working with ESL on other events is different, because those events are not specifically sports washing, because that requires specific knowledge that ESL is owned by Saudi Arabia for like IM Katowice. But I mean, people don't know that. And if the purpose is to trade it for PR.
Yeah, but that's the point. I asked earlier, is this an actual core value you, a human being, has?
Sure, yes, I understand.
First things first, no company in the world has a single value, because companies are just humans who work for them.
Yes.
So when Victor now says, I believe in this, well, if Victor's gone tomorrow and a different guy takes over, magically Team Liquid has different values. So already, companies don't have orgs, only humans do. So that's why actually in this particular case, I wouldn't even say Team Liquid. I would say to Victor, if you actually believe the things you say you do, how can you work with them? And by the way, I don't like that angle either. Like, I'll flip it the same way using the analogy from earlier. So if we're boycotting and putting sanctions on Russia, is that only events in Russia then, guys? Is that only events? What if they want to hold an awesome event in Dallas? The Russians are allowed to do it all, are they? Is that cool? Something all of. Of course it isn't. The premise is you're against the value that they're attacking a sovereign country. Well, in this case, the value is I don't like the way people are being treated in their country. I don't know why it would ever be okay to be like, yeah, but the event itself, owned by the people doing those things, is actually just taking place in Denmark, though. So that's fine, isn't it? It's like, no, which is it? What is the value on display here? Because I agree with you, Monty. It's not, values is a whole fucking like red herring to this conversation. It's not about values. It's about PR. It's all about PR. The point here is they want the PR win of, we're going to do something which in theory could be a PR loss, but claim it as a win. We're just doing like a weird thing like that for some reason.
The difference between ESL and Starlighter back in the day, even though behind the scenes we all knew it was more similar than people ever realized, marketing fucking works, man. At least in Dota, Starlighter was thrown away from the Western or the American lens of like, oh, that's just some CIS org, right? And people were completely unempathetic to the struggle of operating in Ukraine during the time where Starlighter was trying to run an esports organization in Ukraine with the local currency, right? ESL had so many things going for them. They were running this esports Ponzi and got fucking bailed out by Modern Times Group. But guess what? They had better marketing in English. So the audience in English latched onto this group as this guy good, this guy bad. And the reality is most of the audience is that fucking stupid that they actually think it is just this binary system of good guys versus bad guys. And anyone with a brain knows that the world's infinitely more complex. It's all a series of gray areas. Just like The Wire, we're all good guys and bad guys at different times, right? But it's that lens that it gets funneled through. And to your point, I think that's what's happening with the Esports Awards, right? It's just another thing that's very fluffy, topical, easy to latch onto. It's like it's not that big of a deal compared to like a massive tournament and some of this other stuff. So it's just the perfect low-hanging fruit to signal on, because it's not that big of an opportunity cost compared to a $5 million tournament.
Yeah, for sure. And not only that as well, I mean, you know, the thing with the Esports Awards is obviously they did like an interview in their statement and saying it's a partnership, and the fucking savvy group's not going to have any influence over it or whatever.
By the way, I love
they
that,
obviously will.
Again, that you'd even need to say that. Again, Mr. ESL, I'll use your shit. Mr. Esports Awards, why would you need to say that they wouldn't have influence? Why would it ever be assumed they'd have influence, Mr. Esports Awards? Like, I'm just going to do that shit, mate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sir, it's the new tech. But yeah, like, you know,
let's do it.
Yeah, exactly. But like, it's just you know, I know that's not true, because as I said, on the day it happened, I woke up and I was like, I'm not on the Esports Awards Discord anymore. That's odd. And they insta-kicked me before the announcement.
Wait a minute. The first thing they did was like they had a list of things that get the website ready. The post. Have you kicked Richard Lewis from the Discord and removed all Slack access? Like what the fuck? That's so cynical, Richard. That's
Yeah,
so cynical.
right. And it's
Come
like,
on.
you know, listen, I said I wasn't going to work as a panelist anymore. That's fine. They never removed me when I said I quit. Never removed me when I publicly
Oh,
said I
right.
quit. They never removed me when I told them what you did with Mark Merrill was a disgrace. They never, they didn't remove me for any of that. But the day of the announcement they were doing this partnership with the Savvy Games Group, I was out. And for those that don't know, I'm 100% blacklisted now by all of these entities, all of these orgs, ESL, the Esports World Cup, Ralph Reichardt's piss is boiling
That's
about
weird,
everything
Richard.
I'm doing.
That's weird because what's weird is they themselves don't think they're doing anything wrong or compromising themselves. And remember, they're totally fine with everyone having a voice and speaking about it. I thought, so why would they be blacklisting you privately? That's weird. That's almost like they're trying to cover something up or silence you in some way.
Yeah,
You know how that
Richard,
works.
Saudi
Liquid
Arabia is
is
changing, so why does it matter what you say?
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
To Liquid's credit, they're the only organization that have in any way cooperated with my reporting,
play.
even though they
Okay.
know they're going to
Good.
get absolutely fucking slammed. And this is what I mean. It's like, you know, it's hard for me to reconcile what they're doing, but at least they're kind of, you know, I think on some level they at least get it. And it's like you said, Duncan, they've made themselves the, you know, poster boys of this particular topic by doing what other orgs lack the courage to do, which is at least come out and own the decision. But anyway, yeah, I mean, so this is how I know that that claim of like no influence isn't true, because I'm pretty sure. Oh, and they were said, right, we're announcing this partnership, but we can't help but notice that Richard Lewis is still hanging around. Like, he's got to go. So who's told you that, guys? Because you know, no one on the Esports
Fucking
Award
point
panel.
if they had no influence.
Yeah.
What are we doing here then? Why are we buying this? Why do we? That is literally the definition of what's happening
Completely.
here. So it's just such a ridiculous lie to throw out there of like, well, then why? What, just
Yes.
for fun, for charity, because they're gamers that believe in the Esports Awards and how important it is. Like, think about how ridiculous these things sound out loud. This isn't rooted in reality.
When they imply
Well
there'll be no influence. Like if I was to say, Monty, what I said earlier, that like, well, now you probably can't even win an award if you're against it. They would obviously lie and go, no, that's not true. It would still be the same process, right? You're telling me an award show partnered with the Saudis, probably in the future will be in Saudi Arabia, that they were going to allow someone they know expressly speaks against this topic to have an open mic. I don't, again, believe that in good faith.
Well,
it just doesn't
it's
seem
also
plausible at all. You know, they're not.
it's
gonna.
also you know the awards are going to be compromised, like Team of the Year, Team Falcons, Esports Event of the Year, Esports World Cup. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yep.
and even if you say that it's not influence, like clearly it's going to influence some people. Obviously, because
conflict of interest, yeah.
It's a conflict of interest, obviously, because you want the money to continue, right? And it's not even just the money, it's the resources. One of the reasons why this is probably pretty cheap for them to acquire is they already have the stage set up. They already have the producers there. They have the production room set up. So they basically take away almost all of the costs from the Esports Awards and can probably give them a better polish, you know, because ESL will, you know, even if it's not literally physically ESL people in the control room with all that fancy ass equipment, production equipment, just sitting there waiting to be used, right? The stage is already set up. All you have to do is hire your own crew. Again, you'll notice they haven't said this. I have a feeling that ESL is actually just producing this event now, right?
Oh, sure,
And
probably.
even just the relationships that Esports Awards have, like obviously you are going to be more likely to give an award to your mate who's producing your event because you know and like them.
I mean, put it this way. I think it's hilarious as well. Like, because when they put their interview stuff out, people were going, you know, people were posting, oh well, I guess no one gay can win an esports award anymore. You know, no trans people can win esports awards anymore. How the fuck are they going to go to Riyadh to accept the award?
Of course.
Sonic Fox in Riyadh.
Yeah, but by the way, like actually, 100%. Would relish to hear his thoughts. Can't help but notice it's all gone a bit quiet over there, Sonic Fox, my old friend. So anyway,
it's only certain types of Republican tease against.
yeah,
That's not a bad one.
mate. A guy who literally publicly labeled me alt-right.
Okay.
Think about the irony of like who's standing up for LGBT rights and who isn't, right? So anyway, love to hear his thoughts. But anyway, what's really funny is when people were going, so I guess no gay awards in Riyadh, no trans awards in Riyadh, no women coming out, you know, like dressed, you know, in how they want to in Riyadh, and the Esports Awards went, because we're splitting it into 2 events, one in Riyadh and one in London.
Another thing, sir.
Why would you? Yes, sir.
Why would you need to have it in two
Yeah,
places? Why?
Why? What has always famously been one event suddenly being split into 2 events?
I know.
Why are you saying this as an answer to people's concerns about safety and who can and can't win? It's absolutely wild. Like, they
It's just like
think
some
you're all
fucking bad
fucking
Monty
stupid.
Python skit or something, mate. I know. Like, why do we need it there? No, there'll be one for safe, and then one for the one for what? There'll be one safe in London, and then another one. It's like, why does it exist? Why is there another one?
And also, and this is absolutely true, they also said we offer a wide variety of ways for people to accept awards, including Zoom calls. No joke. They said that.
Do you want to know something mad as well, by the way? I want to make it again. I want to hit that point again of where they keep saying that thing of like, we can't guarantee competitor safety. The reason why that is so sinister to me is because, bro, all the people listening haven't looked into Saudi Arabia. They don't even know actually what you indeed do to people. They don't know. Do you put them in prison? Do you punish them? Do you just like censor them? Do you kill them? No one knows. I think when people even think of that topic, they're not sure. Is it like a modern day country like Dubai that they think of like United Arab Emirates and they just do some fucked up shit off camera? They don't know. Is it like those famous stories they've seen in like where they're fucking in Afghanistan, they're like stoning people to death for real biblical level shit where they kill it? So because people don't know that, I actually think you give the whole game away again when you phrase it that way. Like, we can't guarantee anyone's safety. Why would anyone's safety need to be guaranteed to enter an esports tournament? Like, that's even worse, because to me it implies the opposite. You're saying sort of like, well, you know, by definition I could never be certain someone will be fine. No, that sounds to me like a legal get out for when someone does get in trouble, that you can then go, but I did tell you straight up, guy. And in fact, even worse, that's why I also am going to throw back in their face the FlyQuest comment and the Team Liquid comment. That also sounds like, by the way, when you do go there and make some sort of statement and get fucked up by the Saudis, they can just go, it's your choice to attend, though. We didn't force you to.
Correct.
That becomes sinister then, guys.
Thing.
It isn't just like, oh, we're doing our best. That becomes kind of like a bit, that's like you, and this is why it's fucked up. That's like you're planning for the worst case scenario that people are getting imprisoned or killed, bro. Why is that even on the table? Again, listen, I've made loads of fun about Poland over the years. There's no fucking qualms with me that if we have an event in Poland, you never even have to ask the question, can you guarantee someone's safety to play in the fucking video game tournament, mate? Like, that's not even in like the paradigm of what's possible. Like, can people not see
we couldn't guarantee yours, of course.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, guys. I do want to. I think the Esports Awards thing is probably its own episode as we get closer to it.
Just before we pivot, though, because I know you got to do an ad read, I do just want to say one last thing on that topic, and that is that what I find more repugnant is while people are going for liability reasons, we can't guarantee your safety. One thing that absolutely is happening is the Savvy Games Group, the Esports World Cup executives, people like Ralph Reichart, they are saying to people, listen, obviously, if you're with us, nothing's going to happen, no matter if you're openly gay, you know, if you've outed yourself before you come out, or there's pictures on social media of you with your partner, you don't need to worry. We're all fine because they see us as a vector for making money. This is what I find, this is what I find more repugnant, because essentially, what are the things that you find in these countries where they have like there's this disparity in status? Yes, the elites, they can do whatever the fuck they want, and then they use laws and, in this instance, you know, theocratic interpretations of holy texts to essentially persecute people beneath them. You know, like quite famously, you know, I'm sure there's been, you know, in countries that criminalize homosexuality, I'm sure there have been gay people quite senior in you know, politics and all that that never got touched. No one ever talked about it. It's all just hush hush. So what the esports people are participating in right now is they are saying publicly there were no concerns, Saudi are good, they're making progress. And as I mean,
they can't possibly make those guarantees, though. They don't have control over a government, and shit could happen at any time for any reason.
But what obviously what they are essentially saying is, as long as you stay in the fold with us, nothing would happen because we're all making money for the Saudi Arabian state.
That just sounds like if you stay inside of the Jeep on the safari, you won't get eaten by the tigers. It's like, why?
Yes, exactly right. And so what? So what does that tell us? What is that instructive of? Oh, fuck the Saudi Arabian citizens then.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. How very interesting.
Yes.
I don't know. Can we start talking about how that's like maybe racist or Islamophobic or something? It seems a bit much that you'd be willing to sacrifice their lives just so you can post with
Okay.
your boyfriend on Instagram and have a nice time in a beautiful city
Okay.
and just travel there. Yeah, bit weird, isn't it?
I'll just end by this. I actually do want Zyori to say something before we end to go to that break. So all I'll say is I'll just say as a witty last line, I'll just quote one of my favorite rappers, Vinny Paz, who had a line that he said, "The enemy ain't Saudi, the enemy around me." That is indeed how I feel about the esports industry. So there you go.
Oh, indeed. Good old Vinny Paz.
Don't get fooled into thinking that anyone here gives a shit about anything beyond money and what we're talking about. You know, I've worked as broadcast talent for a shitload of events. I'm sure it was the same in other esports, but in Dota 2, I've been to a lot of countries on some pretty shaky visa scenarios, right? I've been a tourist at a lot of gigs, let's say. And that's just been the case for a lot of players, a lot of people. That's not unique to me. But there have been times where my flights have gotten messed up, or I don't get out on time, or one time I got really sick and I had to stay behind for a few extra days. Once that tournament organizer or event organizer is out of the country, good fucking luck, dude. You are on your own. You are a sovereign individual. They're like liable for you while the event is on. Once the event is done, like it's back to the real world. It's a free for all. That tournament doesn't exist anymore. So maybe that's my cynical lens, but I have felt
you're right.
borderline abandoned before by the people that have said, "Hey, come to China. We'll take care of you. We'll give you a handler. Don't worry. This guy knows where to go. He knows all the best stuff." You get there, your handler doesn't have a fucking cell phone. You're lost in the middle of the Shanghai, and you're wondering if you're going to get back to your hotel. Like that has happened to me more than once, and to all these broadcast talent around the world. So I would just implore people to employ a degree of healthy skepticism. This is just business, so look out for yourself first and
Considering
foremost.
we've had esports abductions and ransoms already.
That's true.
Isn't
you guys may not know about them, but they definitely have happened when people have been in countries.
And once again, of course, everyone comes back and goes, "I would like to thank the glorious country where I was kidnapped and ransomed for their wonderful hospitality, and I will be going back there." It's like you're fucking mad, you're crazy, right?
Oh, by the way, there was one last thing I should have mentioned earlier. It's the new thing I'm trying to do, and I want everyone who cares about this cause to take up this mantra. What you do is this. Anytime anyone talks about why they justify the Saudi angle, here's the question to ask them. What would the Saudi Arabians have to do that you would no longer work with them? I actually think it's the question nobody who accepts the money can answer, because I actually think to answer it would put a hard line. And if they ever go over that, and spoiler, the joke is half of them don't even know what the Saudis do. So they don't even know where the line would go. I actually think, by the way, some of the people taking this money don't know. Are people stoned openly? Did they go? I don't think they know anything about this stuff. In fact, I think they go out of their way not to know about it. So that's the question you ask them when someone tries to imply, but they let people drive now. They do it. Well, then, okay, you're almost getting there, mate. Now just tell me the line of what line could they cross? Because by the way, the line for me is stuff like don't put people in prison, don't kill them. So for me, you already crossed the line. I would love to know for these people, though. Same people like Victor, you put yourself out there, mate. What is your line? What action could they take tomorrow? By the way, in this case also, it doesn't have to be against esports people. You've checkmated yourself on that, mate. You've implied you care about, checks notes, everyone in the world who's gay. That seems like a bit of a tall order for me, but you did that, not me. You put yourself as that hero. And by the way, you'd have to be a fucking hero to care about everyone in the world. So if you want to be a hero, go and earn your plaudits. Tell me what is the line for you, because I don't believe there is a line. And the worst thing I think about this, by the way, we didn't even get into this, is like we're acting like it's only the Saudis coming in doing this now and then nothing. Doesn't this open the door for anyone to come in?
Yes.
Like I said earlier, the Russia example, like eventually it becomes the case where actually couldn't Russian orgs just be like, why can't we work with you anymore?
I left that out actually when we were talking about it earlier. Russia did run that state tournament and orgs were pressured into boycotting like nouns and stuff. So, it's, So, I mean, again, this whole thing, everyone's just showing their fucking bare ass on it. Everyone's showing their bare ass on it. Like, I see you,
And for me, it's really the hypocrisy. Go, Zyori.
Pretend like my financial situation at Moonduck was anything similar to what Victor has to deal with at Team Liquid, but I'm trying to think about that question, Thorin. Like, what would they have to do for me to not want to work with them? I can't answer it because in 2018, I already said, this feels icky. I don't think I want to work with you guys. And I just hung up the phone and said, no, we're going to do something else. So, like, I don't want to be this like grandstanding virtue signal guy. And if it's good, if I can do it, you can do it. It's not one to one. But also, when I tried to think about it logically, it came down to a pretty fucking simple system. This doesn't feel good.
Yes.
I can't stand by this based on the culture I've committed to with this company. I'm going to hang up the phone and do anything else. The world has infinite possibilities. I'm going to go do anything else. Now, that sounds really like cold compared to the current esports climate, and I agree. Like the Saudi money is here, and it's. I think Liquid is a bit stuck. I don't want to go in circles, but I just go back to like I just said no. So like, why is it a double standard? You know, why can't other people do the same thing?
Even the
and that's kept me up at night.
Even the thing about all the options of other things you can do in your life, that's a pretty valid point to make. Like, it's not like you're a doctor going there to operate on Saudi children. You're just going to put up with the human right. You're going to play video games. Really, like that trumps people's lives and being alive and not in prison. Like for me, I dedicated my entire adult life to this video game shit, and it's the easiest thing of all time to say goodbye if it means people die. If people I care about are dying, that wouldn't even be a choice. I would immediately say, of course, get rid of the stupid video game shit. And but someone else would then let them take the money, mate. They can just have it. See ya, go for it, have a great time.
Yeah, well, as we said, companies don't have values. And I think that's what's so galling about this is like, as soon as there is a price or a decision to make, like that's when everybody backs off, which is just disappointing. But if you're going to do that, then just be naked about that. I have said many times publicly, I have taken the Saudi money. I did consulting for ESL, face its combined entity, EFG. However, I will say this about myself. I did sign that deal prior to me knowing that this was going to happen, that they would have been bought out. And I didn't re-sign another contract or anything like that. And I have no intention of doing that again in the future. But like that's what I did. And, when we look at this, like, I really just care about the hypocrisy of this issue where people were so willing to cynically get virtue signaling points and like try and run their businesses on that. And as soon as that's not an option anymore, it just goes away. Right. Yep. So my problem here is like, as we look forward to this, I just want people to nakedly take the bag and be quiet. I mean, ideally, I'd like them not to take the bag, but that's just where the industry is at right now. And this is just a perfect time, given the financial distress of esports, for the Saudis to step in. They've realized this is an amazing opportunity to consolidate their power in the industry. And I can't argue with it. It's actually a very intelligent plan. I don't like it, but I can recognize that it is crafty, right? It is savvy.
You can't deny it. It's a great business decision from the Saudi perspective. Absolutely. They see a failing industry. There's nowhere left for the Ponzi to go. We've made it to oil money. We've arrived. There's no next level, I guess, unless Bitcoin goes to $1 million, and maybe those idiots will come back and try to bail out esports. But until then, like, this is it. We've hit the end game here.
Completely.
Yeah. And for them, they get the PR now, and they're playing a very long game. And we all know that eventually esports will be profitable. It's just right now is the rough spot. Like as young people play more video games, the video game world, they're also investing in developers, and that, it's not just esports, it's just gaming in general that they have investments in. So, I do.
You know what would be genius? If the Saudis want the most minor compromise they could make, but allow idiots like the useful idiots out there to seem like it's progress. Here's what you do. Just have an intra-prison women's tournament in an esports game in Saudi Arabia. Have all the activists play in a show match and go, look, they get to play games now. Yeah, but here's what I learned a while ago is this, Monty, I'm going to keep doing it, is because my joke can only ever be offensive if you actually admit that everyone else is doing way more egregious and offensive things. I think I've actually found the trick here. I've got a loophole, guys, because essentially it's like the joke I made to you before, Monty. It's like in that scenario, like if you find that offensive, well, then what you're doing must be way more offensive. You'll literally work with people who kill them in the prison. Like, I'm just saying all the fucking tournament there, like, which is more offensive, guys? That's my question.
But I mean, that's the thing, is that nobody can call them out. And this is the things that we've talked about with LFN is like, it's the reason. I mean, Zyori's a great guest, but the reason we have Zyori, or can have Zyori, is because everyone else is compromised at this point in time, guys. Everybody. This is the issue. because who else is going to talk about it? Like, fortunately, we're people who have other forms of income, are working on a company that is designed to be independent. Zyori left esports. Richard's doing his independent reporting. Thorin and Richard have Substacks. Like, we're all working on this show that has sponsors and viewership thanks to you guys. So we have more of a voice. But who else is there? The teams are partnered with Saudi Arabia. The publishers are partnered with Saudi Arabia. You can say all you want. Well, our employees are free to do X, Y, and Z. But at the same time, like, if you are an employee of Riot or Team Liquid, how the fuck are you supposed to say anything about Saudi Arabia at this point in time? You would just be fired, obviously, or, silenced in a certain way, because guess who's going to come back? The Saudis are going to come back. How do you work with ESL, who runs, the Valve circuits now? Everyone is compromised to a certain degree, so nobody is going to talk about this stuff. Nobody. So, just disappointing. And we are going to pivot our conversations now to talk about the Dota stuff. But you know what, guys? As I said many times, the thing that keeps this kind of content going is the sponsors, and the best way to support LFN is through our sponsors. So Factor is back, guys, for this week. And if you haven't considered, or if you are considering picking up Factor, now's a great time to do it. If you don't have a lot of time, they send you meals that are not frozen, prepared, close to you, fresh, and you could microwave them 2 minutes, have a very healthy option compared to eating out most of the time with the decisions that we typically make when we eat out. Plus, if you're working from home or if you're working at the office, can be a very easy way to make sure that you get fed on a reasonable budget. So you guys, of course, they have 35 different meals. They've got Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto, whatever you want. They've got it there for you. It's very good. I was eating it in the States when I was streaming every day. It was very helpful just to not have to think about that option for me. Wish I could get it here in Korea, where I am right now. But you guys can head to factormeals.com/horsemen50. That's horsemen, plural, not horseman. And use code horsemen50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code horsemen50 at factormeals.com/horsemen50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. So thank you to Factor, and thank you to you guys who support our sponsors. We do appreciate it. It does help us continue to do this kind of content. And if we weren't here, who would be? Who the fuck would be, guys? Literally nobody.
The suitcases are being measured up as we speak, I'm sure. So.
Look, I won't be visiting any embassies.
The thing is, I don't want to joke about it because I feel like joking almost manifests it more into the world. But there are times where when we say stuff like, but hey, Zyori's the only one that could come on. I am so scared one of us wakes up, ringing sound, the bag comes off yet, and there's just a video of this show playing on a wall. Oh, God. And then the joke, it's only by looking at the guest I'll know which issue I'm about to be tortured over. So hope it's not you, Zyori. Hope it's just like, I don't know, fucking some guy from League of Legends or something, mate,
All right. So let's shift the topic of conversation, because it is related in that ESL is involved in this, but it's a larger problem with monopolies in the esports ecosystem. Because remember, now we have Riot. Now, I used to work for OGN, which was an independent television station that was contracted to Riot. So League of Legends didn't used to have a total global monopoly, which, by the way, suppresses caster wages. But all of us have been broadcast talent at some point or another. Counter-Strike at least has Blast and some of these other entities that are operating majors, so that it isn't, there is some level of negotiation that happens so that casters can get paid well. But basically what's happening now, I'll let Richard describe the reporting that has gone on from him in Dota, is that the monopoly structure, so again, not just with ESL, but also definitely with other games, because of the developer monopolies or because of the tournament operator monopolies that are starting to occur, that now talent rates are being suppressed. And this has been, the writing's been on a wall between the monopolies and co-streaming that, like, obviously, talent caster rates were going to go down. But what did you find in the world of Dota, Richard?
Yeah, so basically, at the end of 2023, they were doing, say, towards the end, October-ish. It was the Dream League season, and the people that were working that event were essentially told, "Look, we're making cuts across all of the business, and we need you guys to take a reduction in your day rates. Now, keep in mind, this is the ESL Face It group saying this. This is the ESL Face It group that obviously are framing themselves as having all this infinite investment money. They are announcing record prize pools, and again, if you want to be part of the fucking cool kids table, you have to repeat the mantra. They drive now. Sorry, wrong one. Life-changing money. That's what you have to say over and over again. Life-changing money is the phrase. And yet, when it came to the day rates for Dream League, which, by the way, Dream League has been repurposed essentially to be the road to Riyadh, the Riyadh Masters, the talent were told it was a, quote, one-off necessity. So people agreed. Now, one thing I did have was there was conflicting statements about how much the cut was. I strongly suspect some talent got fucked more than others.
Oh, sure.
But it was between 15 and 30%. I went with 15. That's the lowest amount as the average, but a few sources said 30%. Anyway, so it was framed as a one-off for Dream League, but then ESL One Kuala Lumpur was after that, and it happened again. And then at the start of the year, there was a call. They were all brought in, and they were told, "Look, we're just going to have to make this a permanent thing for all of you. These are your new day rates going forward." And then obviously ESL went on to lay off 15% of its workforce in February 2024.
At least
Now,
they
at the
took a
time,
15% cut too.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Practice what you preach.
Yeah, fair enough. What's good for thee is good for me. So anyway, the at the time of the report, I hadn't been told what was going to be happening around the Esports World Cup. Now, what's interesting is the Esports World Cup day rates have been told by a few people. That's going back up to the pre-cut levels, right? Because they have a tendency to overpay to get people to go to Riyadh because of all the brouhaha that it causes. But essentially, what's happened to Dota is at the time the talent were agreeing to these cuts, PGL hadn't announced they were going to do 8 $1 million prize tournaments across 2024 and 2026. Blast hadn't entered the fray with the Blast Slam circuit, where they're going to do events across 24 and 25. And so I wonder if the talent kind of like jumped the gun a little bit, or I don't know. I can't really figure out DOTA Talent. Zyori will be a much better person to speak to about this. They really seem to act against their best interests almost exclusively. So anyway, I reached out to the ESL Face It group. This is how I found out I was blacklisted. And because not only were they told give him a no, they weren't told give him a no comment. They were told ignore all contact from Richard Lewis specifically. That's what their press office has been told. Any point of contact for any story, Richard Lewis's persona non grata. He doesn't exist. Do not talk to him. But anyway, I asked the following questions: why would ESL need to make these cuts as a business? How does ESL reconcile the volume of prize money that they're putting out there while asking broadcast talent to take cuts to what are in Dota 2 very modest day rates initially? Has ESL signed any broadcast talent to long-term contracts? Because we know they were offering that to CS talent. And has the emergence of other Dota tournaments changed ESL's perspective on these pay cuts? Of course, they refuse to answer any of my questions. So yeah, basically, this is why Monopoly's bad. At the time where these pay cuts were agreed to, the DPC had just been stopped. Valve had stopped doing their tournament, and it probably looked pretty bleak if you were a Dota personality, an analyst, a commentator, a host. It probably looked like you weren't going to be able to get a lot of work, and so you have like a pay cut of 15 to 30%, but a year's worth of work is still better than a pay cut of 100% no work. So I think a lot of people maybe felt a little bit strong-armed.
Absolutely. There's a lot to unpack there, Richard, but I think the key part for Dota Talent and why they're so weird is it's rooted in the DNA, right? This split from League of Legends and Dota at the very beginning, there's always been this tribal warfare mentality, right? So it was really easy when it was Dota versus League, and then both games ended up doing okay for a while, and it was almost like that narrative was why are we fighting? We're both doing great. It doesn't matter, man. Different strokes, different folks. Let's just both succeed and do our own little vertical. And I think in the Dota space, as we went more into ourselves, it was like, well, now who are we going to fight with? And then you had this infighting between Join Dota and Beyond the Summit and the Good Studio, right? Those were kind of the big three for a window there during the golden age. And yeah, it was memes and it was all good fun, but it was also kind of real. Like, I'm pretty sure the founders of Beyond the Summit genuinely didn't like Toby Wan. And I think Toby Wan genuinely didn't like them. And when we started Moonduck, they both thought we were fucking redacted idiots. And we kind of thought they were egotistical jerks. And um, the
By the way,
wheels
for
kind
people who
of
don't know, one thing you've pointed out there that people might not understand is, unlike other esports games, in other esports games, it's like ESL are the ones who run everything and they hire everyone. In your game, the studios are small people like you, groups of people, or Join Dota, etc., or behind the Under Summit, and you guys get contracted by the TOs. You also have a saying who gets hired, right? So I assume you're also implying that there was kind of like a Romeo and Juliet split, where if you're beyond the Summit, you don't hire the Join Dota guys, you have your own guys you hire, right? Something like that.
Mostly, yeah. There were these weird allegiances that didn't quite make sense. You know, Beyond the Summit had some of these contracts, Join Dota had some of these contracts, and PGL came in and they were a whole new set of contracts. Right. Everyone's constantly trying to min-max each other and steal sponsors from each other. And it's like everyone's fighting over this little pie. And Valve did such a great job at reinforcing this culture every year when TI invites would come around, because there was all this mystery shrouded in it. You never knew why you were invited or why you weren't invited. If you weren't invited, you often wouldn't even get a no. Just eventually you would realize, hey, the event's in 2 weeks and I never got an invitation, so I guess I'm not going, right? So this tribalism and this infighting is just deeply rooted in their DNA. And you can see it in these moments when it's a classic Moloch system, right? Like, if they could all just work together and draw a line in the sand, this would be the easiest thing to solve in the world. But they fucking can't. They just can't, because there's all this deep-rooted history, all this egotism, and all of this, like, well, this guy screwed me over this time, and this dude undercut me then, so now I'm gonna retaliate. And when there's enough individual actors that all have these ridiculous like laundry list tallies of this guy was good, this guy was bad, whatever, you're all just constantly stuck in this system of fighting with each other, when the folks that really have all the money and sign all the checks are just taking a step back going, this is fucking awesome, man. We're just pitting them against each other, and now we're going to get the best deal possible. And that's pretty much what's been happening in Dota for the last 10 years.
By the way, Richard, can you give us like, or maybe Zyori can you give us like a ballpark figure? What's like a rate like in Dota 2?
Zyori definitely better equipped.
Just because, as he says, I do think that's a valid point Richard makes. If someone's like, if there are certain games where the top casters make enormous amounts of money in esports, it would be different to ask that person to take 15%. But if, like, for example, Dota 2 rates less than CS, I would be shocked if you have to take a 15% cut. So what's like a ballpark figure? Like,
yeah, so I don't know that I don't know that I ever ascended to the true tier 1 rates, right? Like OD Pixel, Shiver, these people that are at every event probably commission more than me. But I was happy, you know, in 2017, 2018, making like 500, 750 bucks as a day rate doing desk hosting or commentary work.
That's very
Once I got into the $1,000 a day, that was when I felt pretty comfortable. You know, I definitely have heard of tier 1 talent getting 1,500 a day. The most I've ever seen my name attached to was 2,000 per day, and that was like a Red Bull event that was super, you know, Red Bull, and wow, everyone's crazy.
Yeah, okay.
Well, it's also Zyori also, historically, TI has been a very big driver of Dota caster rates from the Dota casters I've talked to. There's big money at TI, not only because you go, but because you actually have in-game sale. You get cuts of in-game sales that are associated with you as a caster, or you get announcer packs.
Correct. And the other tournaments and leagues throughout the year in between TI look at that as a marker, right? The moment you're invited, all of a sudden, okay, Val, that's essentially Val's endorsement of you for this whole next season. And then, everyone kind of makes these decisions. What I've noticed at a lot of Dota tournaments, especially the high-level ones, the people putting them on don't know that much about Dota. They certainly don't know the nuances of what the commentators are saying. So they're listening to the stream, but it's all just noise to them. And I've seen moments where someone says horse shit into the mic for an hour and they come off and get a high five from the executive producer. And I've seen people that have done really great shit on camera that have, 500 Twitter followers come off camera and be disregarded like they're an absolute nobody. So this notion that it's somehow objective, or like the
Right.
people putting on these events are watching every event and there's some like Dota caster MMR system that's
Right.
objective and
Sure.
fair based on your merits. That's a total facade, right? It's all about
Yeah.
networking. It's all about salesmanship. It's all about leveling up and kind of using people and jumping from thing to thing. It's not objective or fair. And a huge portion of the Dota talent, including myself, spent a lot of years under the illusion that it was somehow more objective, or like
Right.
there's somebody at Valve whose full-time job it is to watch all these Dota
Sure.
tournaments and keep track. No, that person does not exist for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
in general, like the Dota talent, as I said, they're very beholden to two entities, and it's the worst place to be because, first of all, Valve are a bit more, I mean, significantly more, really, by the usual standards, hands-on when it comes to the Dota stuff, because obviously they run TI. And so they do pay attention to, well, put it this way, me and Duncan obviously involved in like what, 1,000 controversies, some of them legitimately dumb shit that we
After
did.
the
And we
two
shouldn't have
thing,
done.
I even went out my way about
Yeah.
50 times on Twitter and events to sort of say fuck Gabe Newell. He never,
Yeah.
the joke is he wasn't even know it happened. So that's
Yeah,
what CS
yeah,
is like.
yeah,
I tried to
yeah,
get too good in, but I
yeah.
couldn't. It was impossible.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there was never going to be a Duncan as an
Yeah.
ass post. Like,
No, and I was
you
trying
know,
to switch. It was full cacahuetes.
oh
Full.
no, I saw you, mate. I saw you sailing close to the fucking wind, and no one cares. I mean, like, so
No, it didn't.
basically, I mean, what I think, we've been involved in, like I said, controversies about 2 a year, probably ever since we've been involved in esports, and a lot of them are just stupid fans being fucking soft as fucking baby shit, because that's just what esports fans are. But sometimes, yeah, we've genuinely fucked up, and there should have been probably some consideration about whether or not we go on a broadcast, and
Yeah.
that was just
Why not?
never there. Yeah, it was just
Yep.
never
I've never
there.
heard of it ever. I've never heard of a single back
No,
channel ever, mate.
no. But like, Valve never. I mean, put it this way, without saying too much, I know for a fact that somebody who had a fucking spat with me a few years ago back channel to Valve and went before 20. I think it was before 2021. And they were like, "Listen, you can't have him at the Stockholm Major," and they were just like, "Well, it's not our decision. It's fuck all to do with us. Like, PGL are running the event. Talk to them if you feel that strongly about it." So, people have definitely gone down that route. Now it's totally different in Dota because TI, it's Valve's baby, it's Valve's event. They do take it very
Right.
seriously. They're hands-on about production. I've heard I've heard some wicked fucking stories, by the way. I mean, Zyori probably told me some of them when we were out drinking in Vegas at that event we worked together. But I've heard some wicked stories about like talent that got fucking absolutely roasted by Valve employees because the behavioral standards weren't up to snuff. And like
Yeah.
someone from Valve came in and just tore fucking strips off them in front of everyone else. And so it's a different world for the Dota talent. So I get that side of things. I really do. But the thing that's truly pathetic about the a lot of the Dota talent is when they fall in line because they don't want to upset the community, and they do that. It's linked. They're worried if they upset the community by saying things, and then they go, "What? You're only 4K MMR. Your opinions aren't valid." Because if you think it's fucked up in CS or League about this
Yeah.
nominal ID, you have to be a top player before you offer an opinion about whether or not a player shat the bed when they've done something like ridiculous, like fucking denied Aegis by accident or something. You're not even allowed to point out the most elementary mistakes when pros make them. And so because of that culture that's over there, they keep it very safe. Analysis is very safe. Color commentary is very safe. Color commentary
Yes.
in Dota now, commentary in general in Dota, has veered not into, the like really fucking hardcore detailed stuff it used to be. It's become very more podcasty and conversationally, which is wild because in my opinion, compared to older Dota where we're at now, I think the game is more action packed. There's things happening all over the map, a lot more to keep track
Well,
of,
a
higher
lot of the
kill
best
counts.
broadcast talent retired. I mean, a lot of the
True
best people
also.
that had the balls to come on camera and say, "Yeah, this guy fucked up. That was a bad play. He shouldn't have done this. This would have been more optimal." A lot of those people have just moved on and found more interesting things to do with their lives, right? Like,
Mhm.
I don't know if this culture is prolific in Counter-Strike as well, but in Dota, Valve did a really good job of preying on the passion and getting people to just be thankful for having the opportunity regardless of money, right? Like when I got paid to do TI, it wasn't, hey, you're a contractor, you were hired for a gig. It was, we're going to send you an honorarium. The fuck's an honorarium? Well, it's just like a little gift. It's like a thank you. You know, this whole thing's not really about the money. It's about the celebration of Dota. Super cool. That is sort of true, but it's really about money and capitalism first, right? Like Valve is maybe the most capitalistic company I've ever worked for, and they are just so good at capitalizing on this thesis of why pay people when they're willing to do it for free. And that's what it comes down to. And that culture is prolific in the talent that have been gaslit into believing that that's a truth and that they're lucky to have the opportunity to be there and represent the game that they're so in love with, despite the fact that the broadcast is monetized, the game is monetized. You're talking about the battle pass, which of course is monetized. You're just a pawn in the whole ecosystem. But the people that are in it, from their perspective, when they're knee deep, are like, I'm just so glad I got another gig. And that's what keeps this whole flywheel turning of this relatively small set of people fighting over literal pennies in the ecosystem. And that's what manifests almost all of this crazy shit that you're talking about. Like, why are all these people making decisions against their own collective best interest when it comes to their wages and their working rates? That's really the answer, because the passion almost works against them. The very reason of why they were able to make their careers in the first place also holds them back, because they love Dota almost to a fault, to the point that these professional negotiators, these people that are business people first, are able to take advantage of them. And it's sad, but it's the fucking world we live in.
I also just want to say that, like, you know, we talk a lot about the teams having been the big losers kind of the esports economy and the esports ecosystem, because it was the publishers and the developers who were getting all the microtransaction money and being able to hide all of that, basically, whether it's Valve through, you know, the passes for TI, or the skins, or, you know, the Counter-Strike skins, or the skins in League of Legends, or, you know, everything that Epic has run as well. And that, you know, sure, the teams got some venture capital, but they had to burn that in order to survive. The media rights deals that were promised never came through. The sponsorship ended up drying up. And sure, we can blame the teams for a certain degree, but ultimately they were forced to take venture capital in order to be part of the ecosystem because of the franchising that happened. And the developers wanted them to take VC and, like, shotgun wedding them off to sports teams or big venture capital funds so that they would have stability for the long haul. And so that's why they set the prices of these franchise fees at X number of dollars, right? To create a barrier to entry. So anyway, we can certainly criticize some of the teams, but I have sympathy because I think they had to do it to survive, basically. And the players have been big winners because they get a cut of that battle pass system with TI's prize pool. They are millionaires. They had massively inflated salaries. Teams were paying them way, like, 150, 200% of the revenue of the team, which they should have been in a normal sports league at 50%. That's how much the players should have been paid if you're running a sustainable business, right? 50% of revenue. That's what a lot of professional players unions negotiate for. When the media rights deals come in, et cetera, the sponsorships. So that's how salary caps are set in American sports, if you guys don't know. So anyway, one of the other big losers here has been the broadcast talent, i.e. the people who have been expected to know these games inside and out. Because sure, you might think, wow, $1,000 day rate, that sounds good, except you don't get paid on the days you're not casting, and you have to be relevant, create your own content, do all of the research for that game, watch other events, you know, be keyed in on other events that you're not even contracted to. So sure, I mean, you can make $100,000. You can make $200,000. You can make, if you work a lot, especially in Counter-Strike, you can probably make $300,000. But it hasn't been life-changing money. It hasn't been $1 million prize purse or $1 million contract for 1 year from a team. And there's no job security because they can drop you, you used to be an employee, but even if you were an employee for Riot, some of these guys, when they were employees, were making, no joke, $60K a year to live in Los Angeles. So, I mean, they were fucking broke. I will tell you that. Even, you know, in League of Legends, I think the most I ever made was like maybe a little over, maybe like 120 in a year between my OGN contract and like,
Dude,
Riot
you know
paid
how
me.
crazy that is? When I started at Beyond the Summit in 2014, I made $30,000 a year, and I
Yeah,
worked more than 40 hours a week. And at the
yeah.
time, I didn't think that was that bad. And relative to where I was in my career, it wasn't. But for how much I worked and how burned out I was 2 years after that, yeah, I realized how little money $30,000 a year is. That's like an
Right.
entry level. That's less than the average salary for my business degree that I paid for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I was getting paid. I think my first year at OGN something like 40,000 equivalent to US dollars. Obviously, in Korea, cost of living is less, so it was okay. But it was less money that I was getting paid to work my previous job in New York City. Again, different circumstances, but so my point is like this has never been highly lucrative for people. It's not like some of the co-streamers make millions of dollars now, and that's great. And some of them are, in fact, former commentators, but a lot of the commentators that have made life-changing money have been the ones who became streamers. They're the Courages of the world who left Call of Duty. They're now the Cadrels, right, who have left the LEC broadcast. And that these are the people who are actually making the money. But the bag never came for the casters. When the industry got bought by the Saudis, they didn't make the money. They were freelancers. They make the same amount of money they did previously. And you're on this constant treadmill, and like nobody's offering you a 3-year contract, guaranteed contract. You're just like, they call you up and they're like, hey, you free in 2 months for this gig?
That
You know what I
was
mean?
Beyond the Summit's argument.
Yeah.
They said, dude, this 30 grand a year is a good deal because it's guaranteed. If we get no gigs, you still get your 30K guaranteed. But it swung the other way, of course. I ended up working more and it was a better deal for them. But what you're saying was exactly the sales pitch that worked on me. It was like, dude, at least you're going to eat. If you're on your own, like, yeah, sure, we might hire you randomly, but there's no guarantee. You're in. Like in 2014, just having a guaranteed income felt like such a luxury.
The best deal I ever got, guys, was my first 2-year contract from the Overwatch League because it was a 2-year deal. And even today, people don't get multi-year deals. That's extremely rare.
Yeah, the talent
Obviously,
don't. Meanwhile, if
Yeah.
you're a dog shit player, you can get locked in for fucking 3 and just have a guaranteed salary when you're on the bench for 2.5 years of that.
right. But my point is like why this is a big deal, guys, is that casters are being able, because here's what happened. When ESL asks the casters to take rate cuts, the thing is that all those employees of ESL who had stock in the company, who had equity, got giga payouts. And okay, so they got the money. They get to keep their jobs for the most part, even if they're laid off. Like in Europe, especially, all those employees that are laid off have extensive, compensation packages for getting laid off. But as a caster, you could literally never work again tomorrow, ever. And so if you say no to a pay cut when there's these monopolies in the circuit, it's like if you turn down a day rate from Riot, there isn't any other place to go because actually now there is, hilariously, which is the Esports World Cup, but it's one event a year.
Oh, I'm sure they still have influence about who can and can't be hired for that as well.
I'm sure they do too.
One thing as well that Richard referred to earlier as well is the reason why also, it's quite clever. It ties into what Zyori said about people being against each other. Like obviously the dichotomy of being broadcast talent is your literal friends and colleagues are also your direct competitors for the same job. So that leads to a world where even if you don't overtly fuck them over, it's always sort of a prisoner's dilemma. It's like, I can't really tell you totally what I'm doing to do exactly what you said you're going to do, because maybe you then rely on that and then go to the guy and offer 100 less and get the gig instead of me. So the other reason why, in my opinion, no one's ever been able to do any like successful, meaningful group action is because also the TOs are really slick about this shit. I mean, here's the really dirty secret. If you're a casual fan, almost all the people making these hiring decisions were broadcast talent. They have fully gone over to the dark side.
Shout out Joe Miller.
Diablo 2, they actually became the villain at the end of the first game. Like, there's the fucking metaphor, because I've always used that for Carmack. So what I'll say is this. The saddest thing is, because they used to be broadcast talent, they're also smart enough to know that the one kind of person who could actually battle them is the biggest caster. It could be Henry G or Toby 1 back in the day. So here's the other thing. If you go to a Toby 1 or a Henry G and you tell them to take a pay cut, you make that like €100 a day pay cut off their 2K a day. So it's not even that big a deal. Or if you smart, by the way, you don't even make them take the pay cut. You give them their rate, so they'll never use their massive influence or even incite the others against you. And the person you make take it up the arse is the guy who doesn't get anything, the least popular caster, the caster who is happy to be the guy who already was on €700 a day, and then when he has to take 200 off, he was never making like a great living off it anyway. So he just goes, yeah, I guess I have no power anyway. So the other thing is, they're also really cynical how they apply these sorts of cuts and where they put the leverage and the pressure. Like, they don't just come in, despite what they might pretend, and go, uniformly, we need everyone to just take exactly the same percent. Like Richard said, they're definitely going to give certain people a discount or a better deal, as it were. And that'll, if my opinion, for self-serving reasons, they're going to do that based on how much of a threat you are. If you're no threat, then you're just going to take the maximum cut. And by the way, if you don't, as Monty said, good luck. They're the only game in a game like League of Legends. They're the only game in town. So the question doesn't become, do you want to take a 15 to 30% pay cut? The question is, do you want to take a fucking 30% pay cut or 100% pay cut? That really does become the option eventually.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I can just tell you,
go on.
Go ahead.
in league, what has been happening is, like, sure, they haven't been cutting people's rates, but like they cut the days that you work, and the formats that they've been running allow fewer days, which allows less income. They've moved people over to full-time freelancing. So you're now responsible for, freelance taxes if you're in America, your own health coverage, everything like that, which is fine. I mean, I think having freelance casters is fine, as long as when you move, they pay you more as a result of that to cover these expenses. But you have no, there is no job security. You're basically signing year-to-year contracts. And even if they haven't cut rates throughout all the inflation that we've gone through for the past few years, casters really haven't gotten raises in League of Legends, and you're still playing the same bullshit. And here's the thing, Zyori, you'll be used to Dota, where it's like, oh, if you get TI, you get paid more money. In League of Legends, you get paid the exact same amount of money to cast your domestic regions regular season games as you do to cast the fucking finals of the World Championship. The exact same amount of money.
Yeah, that's crazy. But what you're touching on is, like, I'm curious what you guys think about this. And this might be a little bit of a hot take, but it feels like if you're DOTA Talent and you're stuck in this system where you're convinced, okay, I've hit the peak, my rates can't go up, and or we can't negotiate. The only other way you can eke efficiency out of that system is to do less. Right? You agree to take less pay. If I get 20% less pay, but I put in 50% less effort, that's sort of like a raise. It's not exactly a raise, but I started to see it when I was leaving the scene, where you see people in the green room that used to be taking notes, paying close attention, really engaging, taking a nap, playing their Switch, doing other things, working or editing videos for their own brand, and saying, okay,
which is a better use of time, honestly. If you are like creating your own content during that time, like, it makes you a worse broadcaster because you're not doing the research. But that's all. The only thing anybody cares about is like how big you are and not how good of a job you're actually doing.
Hit the breaking point, right? And I wonder if Dota is starting to enter this race to the bottom, where there's this really nasty dynamic where the organizers have realized, as we've said earlier, what are we overpaying these people for? If we take a tier 1 person or a T3 person, our viewership is the same, our sponsorship revenues are the same. Basically, everything about this business is the same, except the broadcast is slightly lower quality. But if nobody cares enough to actually tune out as a result of that, then we're just overpaying. So fuck it. Let's just take the lower tier or pay them less and see where this system goes. Then that encourages the talent to put in even less effort, try less hard. The best talent move on to other opportunities outside of esports or in other games because they can make more. It's more engaging. It's just a better use of their fucking mental bandwidth because they can have a greater impact on the world. What do you end up with? Lower quality broadcast talent, events that have lower quality broadcasts, and a system where both parties are kind of working against each other, like actually to a race to the bottom, both in dollars earned for the broadcast talent and quality of the fucking show that the broadcast talent are participating in. And I want to believe that there's a breaking point where those organizers go, okay, it's actually worth it to hire the best caster because we're starting to see a difference in the quality of our programming. But it's just not that black and white. And there's all these other things that you can blame and all these other variables. And with Saudi money injecting all of these funds into the ecosystem, it just changes the game completely. And it leaves these scattered casters with even less leverage than they started.
But here's the thing, is that there isn't any value to casters because there isn't any competition in the ecosystem, because there's one tournament organizer or there's one publisher that's running the game, and they don't provide any alternatives. I mean, they do now. hilariously through co-streamers. And now they're like, wow, co-streamers get 80% of the viewership. It's like, well, you know, that should tell you right there that there is value to having the right talent on the broadcast. You know what I mean? Or there's a different way of doing things.
Sure. And I mean, the other thing, of course, is like normally how you would do it in the world of broadcasting is exclusivity matters, right? Like, not the one thing we don't do very well in esports is if you're the hot shit. And look, I get it, make hay while the sun shines, but you're at every fucking event, and this is why the journey for every broadcast talent, with a handful of exceptions, is, oh, this guy's shit. He tries too hard. They're trying too hard. I can't fucking stand him. Why are we listening to this dickhead again? I'm fucking. But who even is he? He's got no followers on social media. Oh, I really love that guy, actually. He's really good. Should be getting more chances. I'd love to see him on more of the streams. Yeah, he's actually really funny. Him and his partner are fucking great. Yeah, they're really good. Oh, yeah, they're the number one. They should be doing all the fucking finals, them. Why aren't they in the final? I'm not going to watch if they're not in the final. They're my favorite caster. I want to hear them all of the time. I don't even watch the games anymore unless they're in it. I'm kind of getting a bit bored of them by now. Have you noticed how they repeat phrases over and over and over again? They say the same things over again. I'm just starting to notice it. They're phoning it in now. It's fake enthusiasm. It's not even real. Fucking hell, they're washed. Why are they even hired? I'm sick of them. I'm sick of them. I'm sick of them. So
And that's
I
just
am.
6 months. That's just the
Yeah,
first 6
exactly.
months.
And that's the punchline. And so, unfortunately, what talent has never really got to grips with what it is, you can have that career trajectory if you want, and you make a ton of money for 4 years because you're at every event and you're getting the top rate for about 50% of that time. That was a similar journey, by the way. I went on when I was regular broadcast talent. If you look at my fucking Wikipedia page, there's like just 2014 sprinkle here, but then 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, I'm fucking mega. I'm doing all sorts of events. And then after that, obviously, fell off, washed, for real, hold this L, whatever the fuck. and that's life, right? But what you're supposed to do somewhere along the line, which is what I did, is you get a company like E-League and you go, listen, I won't work at the people's events. Like, part of the draw will be, if you want to see that desk with that style, with that banter, you come here. And I'll always ask your permission if I want to work another event. And in exchange for that exclusivity and us rising together as a brand, you're going to pay me a little bit more money than the going rate. So I want my 6 figures, please. Thank you very much. And that's what talent should be doing. You shouldn't be at every single event. You should be doing a deal. This is what right. If you want to hear, or this is just an example, if you want to hear OD Pixel, PGL, you don't hear him at ESL events. And everyone goes, oh shit, man, he's my favorite commentator, so I really want to listen to him. So I'm going to tune into all the PGL events. And ESL has lost a little bit of that luster. And then ESL go, fuck, we've missed out on the OD Pixel bidding war. Well, fucking hell, we better go give Lyrical the bag because Lyrical's popping off right now, or, whatever it might be, right? And so that's what's supposed to happen in the world of broadcast talent. That's what happens in media, TV shows, movies,
Right.
everything, right? Like, certainly in mainstream sports broadcasts. That it doesn't happen like that in esports, and it's by design, because the fucking the puppet masters, the Joe Millers, right? They're like literally fucking relishing in the idea that you're staring into the abyss, terrified about irrelevancy. If you miss 2 events back to back, will you ever get hired again? They want to keep you in that state of trepidation, because when they come to you and ask if you want to take a pay cut, or if they say, we don't know if we can hire you for this event, we might need you to go a bit above and beyond with some of the extra shoulder content. Like, we might need you to do the after show as well as the casting. Is that all right? You go, fucking hell, yeah. Oh, I better had say yes. And so this is what I mean. Like, the broadcast talent, by and large, they never really got it. DOTA talent, as far as I can tell, they get it the least. and that's cool, because they're just a different breed to, like, the rock
One
and
of the sad
roll.
things is that actually that example of Too Good is what basically fucked Dota, right? He was the guy
Yeah.
who sort of was leading in the right direction in that sense, right?
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's just, it's like I said, they're just cut from a different cloth to, like, us lot. I mean, like, I've been out partying with League of Legends talent. I've been out partying with a lot of CS talent, right? But then I've partied approximately twice with DOTA Talent, and trust me, there's not really a lot of partying to be had. It's like,
I was gonna say
what?
they have parties.
It's 10 o'clock, guys. We're never gonna get this game of
Yeah.
Risk in if we stay out later than this. So that's what you got over there. So it's like maybe that is the perfect community to
You know
just
what
be
I've just
doing it for
realised
the
is
love
the
of
ultimate
game.
irony
I
of all
haven't-
time, though, is that literally the game. I'll tie together the joke with the real point, which is Richard's correct. Even the most nerdy loser, League of Legends caster, still is there at the after party having a drink. The joke is all the DOTA talent are in someone's room playing Mafia, a game which, ironically, if they were good at, would actually enable them to get a higher day rate if they could actually, pass
They're fucking
information
practicing, mate.
and
They're
see
fucking
who's
grinding
what
for
team
Business
and who's
Simulator.
secretly against you. Exactly. The stupid thing is, all the skills you're venting in Mafia could help you with the fucking industry, you idiots.
I can't tell you how many event nights I've wasted arguing with
Gosh.
people over dumbass Mafia arguments, dude. It's ridiculous. That is such a good shout. No, you're right. The Dota talent are weirdly cut from a different cloth, and I wonder, like, has it just gone on to, like, is it cultural at this point that this is a different breed of broadcast talent? Like, I'm curious if you guys, maybe I'm over indexing here and I'm showing my age, right? But Toby Wan is one of the most interesting esports like personalities in my mind, because he did some Counter-Strike events, right? Obviously, he was the voice of Dota for a lot of years there, but he was undeniably a really weird guy. And Join Dota had this weird
That's
mini
putting it
monopoly
fucking
kind of
mildly.
stranglehold on the whole scene. And Toby Wan was a big part of that. And then after this whole Me Too event happened, he just disappeared. It was like the voice of Dota was just gone one day. And so many of the dramas that I remember were rooted. I'm not trying to throw Toby under the bus, but just strong personalities clash with other strong personalities, right? Like the Beyond the Summit Join Dota rivalry was absolutely rooted in founders on one side don't like founders on the other side, right? If one of those founders just disappears, the game theory of the whole space completely changes. And I just always wonder, like, there was this, I just get caught up on this deep tribalism. I don't know. It's not Toby's fault, but I always had a weird, he was never mean to me, but he was never nice to me either, And I always felt this, like, okay, I'm never going to work Join Dota events. I'm not on that team. Like, these people think that I'm weird or a pariah or don't like the cut of my jib or whatever it is. I don't know, but I do know that Toby doesn't like me and they're never going to invite me to events. So you just kind of write off that whole group and latch on to another group. And then I was Team Beyond the Summit for 2 years until I had a falling out with them and made my own team, right? But like, that whole system is indicative of what the broadcast talent life is like in Dota 2. You're playing Survivor, and you better hope that your tribe has enough people to beat the shit out of the other tribes, or all of your bags go to zero. The tribalism is just, is it the same in Counter-Strike? Do you guys have that degree of tribalism?
Not really.
Broadcast studios and teams?
How it always historically worked for us is everybody sort of implicitly knows who's the hot shit and who isn't. And obviously, when it's their time, they generally diva-ish. I mean, like, the fucked up thing is, like, all the CS talent, they all, like, we all act like rock stars, but then, like, they're just a gossipy bunch of bitches as well, like, unreal fishwife level of gossips, ratting each other out. No one has a secret. Like, if you say to one person, like, oh, I'm going to be working this event, you get 5 phone calls going, well, I hear I'm going to be seeing you in a few weeks. Who the fuck? Well, I've only told one person. So, like, that fucking trust bridge has been irreparably destroyed, except it never is, because you just get used to it over a period of time. The only way the dynamic is different is, I will say, historically, we fought to get other members of our group paid. We all took a pay cut in 2015 to get Moses to a major. Cluj-Napoca, quite famously, Anders and Semler did a lot of battling, not just for better rates, but better conditions at work events. But then the problem always is, there's always one tyrant from within the group at any given moment in time. It could be a red eye or whatever it is, and then they're in the talent pool, but they're also the one that fucking is
Sorry, to clear my throat there. Pardon. But I said it out loud, even. That's weird. Why would I say that? Just clear my
And so historically, and this is what I mean, this is the shit the fans don't know about, but like, historically, yeah, there's all these people that are like, listen, their talent, but they are hugely influential in hiring decisions. It was a mistake I nearly made when I started E-League. E-League came to me and said, listen, Rich, it's your show, you're the host, tell us who you want us to go and get. And I went, I'd rather you didn't put me in that position. And then a rumor got started that I'd said, oh, we can't have Henry and Sadikist. And it's like, well, I don't know why I would ever say that. Like, Henry's a friend. I think Sadikist is the greatest CS caster of all time. But that got started, and then Henry was a bit weird with me, and Sadikist was a bit weird with me, and all the talent was with me. And I'm like, guys, I want to make it explicit. I have nothing to do with the hiring decisions at all. I gave an opinion. I will never express an opinion ever again about anything, ever, to the executives, to the suits. Because I didn't want to be that tyrant. I didn't want to be the red eye type that was essentially coming to you and giving you unwarranted, unwanted feedback that was basically code for, if you keep being this shit, in my opinion, I'm going to tell someone not to hire you. And so, yeah, that's how it always worked for us. It was just that basically the community didn't really have a lot of influence over whether or not you got hired. It was just essentially when it was your time, everyone kind of recognized it was your time. And then when it wasn't your time, the expectation is you will work twice as hard for fewer opportunities, maybe even less money. And eventually you'll get put out to pasture and you'll go behind the camera or making executive decisions, or you'll just fuck off. And that's that. It's like you just go out to the woodshed and it's over. And
I wondered if Counter-Strike had a slightly better community as well. Every gaming community feels like they have the most toxic, worst community in the world. I hear that over and over again. But like the Dota community, they want everything for free. I don't know that I've ever seen a gaming community that spends more money on a game that
Dota's
refuses
the
to
worst, by
open
the
up the
way.
wallet
Dota
for
is the worst. It's the worst
podcasts,
community.
free content. Like they don't support the people that support them, and I have not worked in a lot of other esports to the point that I know what it's like elsewhere, but I will say I've spent a lot of time making a lot of free content that very few people gave a shit about, and it does get frustrating. And I wonder, it's almost like the Dota talent are like afraid of their fans instead of excited by their fans. Reddit isn't a place that you go to have a discussion. It's a place where you go to pucker your butthole and hope that today's the day that you don't get canceled. And it's this revolving door of hot potato of, well, somebody's getting canceled today and I'm just going to shut the fuck up and see where the cards fall,
Yeah, you literally, what I've observed about DOTA talent is it's basically like you almost don't have any interactivity with the community whatsoever. That's considered like quite a bad idea. Like Slacks is probably one of the few people I think that's kind of got like immune to it, because we all know Slacks is a cunt in a game. Right, like he's not even going to mind me saying that, right? Which, by the way, that's one of the cardinal fucking sins that you could commit. He gets tilted, he fucking flames people, and he's just out there. By the way, I'm the same. We're just out there in fucking solo queuing into randoms, calling them cunts. Like, I mean, we're just out there doing that, right? And because Slacks is like this person, but because everyone knows it now, he kind of gets away with it, and he's always been a quirky personality or whatever. And he'll come on Reddit when someone makes a thread. I just played with Slacks, and he griefed, and right? And he'll just come into the chat going, "Yeah, you're a dickhead. Now what?" Right? And I love that, right? It's one of the reasons I love him. I always fuck with Slacks, but most Dota talent don't get to do that. In fact, they are terrified of the fans, because if you ever fall into that, I mean, you've seen it during TI. Right, you've seen it when there are members of the talent pool that aren't particularly well liked or aren't well respected. And I've seen this historically, bizarrely, often with women, I have noticed. Not saying there's a higher concentration of incels in the Dota community, but spoiler, there's a higher concentration of incels in the Dota community. So
it's the most neckbeard community for sure.
I mean, listen, if ever you were going to turn over rocks and find incels, like, it's going to be around this game, isn't it? So anyway, they've like I've seen it. I've seen like people like Moxie get like viciously fucking torn apart, and what they did to Frankie. Frankie comes in as an outsider, host TI. She's been asked to be there. And again, because you have to kiss the fucking feet of this ridiculous community with the most entitled babies I've ever seen in any video game. She literally, for like 9 months before she went to even do the event, she was like queuing with like Purge and day and night, like playing Dota to learn the game for a role that requires you to have zero game knowledge. And she asked one player, I think it was a Team Spirit player, she asked one player one question that people who don't even speak proper English were fucking deliberately warping their minds to interpret it as being rude. It was just a cheeky question, classic Frankie style. And because she pushed the coach, I think it was, of Team Spirit a little bit to get an answer, they all turned around to basically attack the fucking pregnant woman relentlessly for days, saying she shouldn't be hired, saying she's a garbage person, she has no place in Dota, and all of this other stuff. And it's just like every time something like that happens, and it happens every big Dota event, every TI, they always latch on to one person about why they're shit, why they shouldn't be there, why is B Cop not been hired over this person, you know, however they frame it, right? The talent are always looking at that going, well, I don't want it to be me. I don't want it to be me. And so you get to a desk and then you go, well, hey, so listen, that was a terrible draft, right? They totally shit the bed. They fucked it up and now they're out the tournament. Well, you know, that's not what happened, sir, because if you look at it through their eyes, actually it was a good pick, but it wasn't well executed. In fact, no, I mean it was well executed, but these things happen. Teams just lose in the moment. Anyone can win on the day. That's Dota, am I right, guys? Am I right? And it's like watching a fucking ISIS hostage fucking video and not a death segment. They are fucking terrified. The fans are treating me well, and all the players are really, really good at the game. Can I go to the TI, please? I fucking feel so sorry for them because they live in like some insane panopticon, and it's just not fair.
By the way, I even use that example of Frankie to show how insane the double standard is. Because you're right, Richard, it is one of it's that flirting harassment meme where the exact same thing done by someone else is unacceptable. Then it's fine otherwise. Like the obvious one is, so Frankie's role was fucking stage host / interviewer, right?
Yes.
Yeah, in theory, interviewer requires some knowledge of the game. The reason I bring that up is, who was the most famous person who did that role at TI before? A literal fucking like news anchor from the local TV station, who, by the way, I even made a joke about this because I actually thought was mad. Dude, years later, she was implying, I might even play the game one day after she'd done about like 30 TIs in a row or something, right? So she's doing all these TIs. By the way, because she never ever gave any illusion she was some like top, she was universally loved, embraced. People begged for her to come back. Frankie, an actual top professional who's worked, by the way, on like the BBC, etc., like way bigger than local TV, by the way, and had done all the other big esports games like Majors, League of Legends. She can't even actually buckle down and learn the game and ask a question. That's considered like, why is she in the game? But it's the same fucking job. Like, well, that to me, that was a mad one because essentially I can't think what possible reason, aside from the fact like she's our own with Casey or whatever, would apply to her that wouldn't apply to Frankie. Like, surely Frankie's an even better, more qualified person.
That was literally it.
Sorry, go on, sorry.
Literally touched on it. It was Casey is a normal news anchor that latches onto Dota. She's one of ours. We broke her into Dota. This is a normie, and now she's a Dota person. Frankie, she plays that other game. You want to come into our game? You're a poser by default until you prove it otherwise. And proving it otherwise means basically being a 9K MMR fucking immortal level pro player that knows every single thing as everyone else that's on the stage. It's a ridiculous double standard, but it goes back to the tribalism that I'm so obsessed with. These Dota people are just tribalists at heart. If they see you as part of Dota tribe, they love you unequivocally no matter what the fuck you do. If they see you as part of another tribe, you have to grovel and kiss the ring, kiss the shoes, and then they might maybe give you a chance and make up their mind later. That's how this community sees itself.
Yeah, you have to pander. I mean, that's that more than any other esports community. You must pander to this fan base, and if they despise you for whatever reason, you've got two choices. You can either just own it and be like, right, well, fuck you. You don't like me. Guess what? I don't like fucking weirdo neckbeards who post anonymously on Reddit and harass women. I don't like you either.
Do you remember when Fnatic switched from Heroes of Newerth to Dota 2? Yeah. Oh, by the way, Fnatic, the team that became OG, the two-time winners that were like the poster boys of Dota 2, when they switched from Han to Dota 2, the rhetoric around them was absurd. The ridiculous, the sellouts, the guys that are just hopping onto the latest. I mean, there was so much vitriol against them, and then they swung it the other way to become the best players ever. But if you think about the ridiculousness of that system of these guys that are playing basically the exact same game and then switching over to this one, that is the least drama fueled thing in the world. It's just gamers moving on to the next big thing. And it took them winning 2 TIs to really shift that narrative. I mean, it took a lot of time, but it even the Heroes of
And
Newerth
when you
versus
consider
Dota 2
players, when you consider players have a much easier time of it in the community, because obviously there's the aspirational element, and pleb esports
Correct.
fans just self-insert themselves anyway. And he like me for real, for real. If I had all the time to grind, I would be as good as that. Yeah, yes, yes, yes. And also, he's a little bit socially awkward, isn't he? And that is like me for real, for real. So there's always this like fucking self-insert thing going on with pleb esports fans. So players always get away with more, and and that's fine. In a sport, if you're gonna idolize anyone, definitely idolize the players. That makes sense. But I'll say the other thing you're supposed to do is if you don't want to be like the fucking I'll take the licks on Reddit, and maybe I don't go to all the tournaments, and maybe Valve noticed that and I don't go to TI. Very few people are like that. I mean, again, there's a handful of people that have even had what I would consider edgy personas in Dota, and a lot of them don't even work now. But the other thing I think you're supposed to do is, thank you, sir, may I have another? Thank you, sir, may I have another? And if you do that for about 3 or 4 years, eventually I can't even beat you anymore. Like, I'm fucking, all right, you are one of us now. You've earned your right to come into the fold. Like some insane, long, drawn-out, Masonic...
It's like reverse Stockholm syndrome. Like, eventually, you just get to join the robbers gang after being their hostage for long enough. Like, what the fuck?
They did that. I mean, like, listen, all joking aside, right? I think about how beloved Shiva, rightly so, by the way, she's fantastically talented. She's a wonderful human being. And I think how beloved she is by the community now. And then I contrast that, because I was there at the start when Shiva was coming through, and, she used to stream and used to play. And then obviously started getting picked up for broadcast work. The abuse she got is like, despicable. It's some of the worst I've ever seen on the internet. Like, so,
Richard, you're so unbelievably right. People don't even realize now, because she's idolized as, oh, this is like the Dota queen, right? Shiva has ascended to this next level. People forget about what the past was. In 2014, we're talking about Star Ladder. There was a point in 2014 where there were more competitive Dota matches happening on any given day than there were commentators to cover them. Right. There was this golden, like the gold rush of Dota 2. And Shiva and I were two of the like tier 3 commentators that were like, okay, we're at home. We have nothing else to do. We believe in this. Let's just turn on the Twitch stream and broadcast whatever the fuck is on today. The latest Star Ladder season 6 matches that nobody cares about, because it was the only thing that you could do and no one was covering it. So it was actually like providing a service to the community. And I remember both of us just being absolutely ripped apart and compared in this really unfair way, and this like Zyori versus Shiva. And it's like, wait, we don't even feel a rivalry. We're just two regular people that are underemployed that see the opportunity here. And it took her years and years and years of just like almost, I mean, forgive me if this is a fucked up analogy, but I would say like Jackie Robinson style levels of just letting it deflect, just ignore, and just proving to the world that she's fucking good, that she's fucking engaged, and that she loves the game, understands the game, and has a passion for her work. It's a shame that it took half a decade worth of effort for people to recognize that. It's absolutely disgusting.
But the really gross part is like the community then turn around and say, well, that never happened. We didn't abuse her for 5 years. We always loved her. She was always one of us. She's one of our own. We always love our own in the Dota community. No, complete bullshit. That's why you're different to almost every other esports fan base, actually. This is why you're one of the worst. Because the only thing you really do care about is your little fucking wizard hats and your battle passes and giving money to fucking Daddy Valve and because the culture there has been everything they complain about, the fans get, and they get it quicker than any other esports fan base anywhere. I mean, worse than even League of Legends, where Riot are constantly scanning the subreddit. You complain about something in the game, it gets fucking fixed that night. in Valve terms. And so obviously they get used to this idea of, well, this is our game and we get to dictate who can and can't be in it. It's one big episode of Big Brother and we're holding the fucking voting button. And so they do it to broadcast talent. They absolutely fucking needle them, safe in the knowledge that actually it probably does move the dial in the opinion of Valve. You know, it shouldn't, but maybe it does. And so on and on and on it goes. And it's just this talent gauntlet. I watched it again with Moxie, and by the way, at the last TI she worked, there was all these threads going, you know, it was on the cusp of just turning. You know, maybe we have been too harsh to her. Like, I saw some of the most vile abuse. And it's like, listen, you can think, by the way, some commentators are indeed better than others. But what the case you can't make is somebody is so grotesquely incompetent, they don't belong there when they're regularly doing S-tier work. It doesn't hold up. What, like nobody else in the industry can see what only you, a fucking Reddit pleb who has never worked in entertainment, esports, probably just never fucking worked, full fucking stop, never had a job, knows nothing about that dynamic. Only you can see that this person is terrible, incompetent, irredeemably so. But everyone else, their colleagues, the people making the hiring, they can't, right? You figured it out. And so that, honestly, in DOTA, it is insane. I've only done like 2 DOTA events, I think, in my time, if memory serves me correct. And both times I watched talent I was working with getting fucking wrecked. And this wasn't even TI. So I get it. I understand the position they're in. It's like more than any other set of talent, they're really beset upon from all sides. We've got functional monopolies, or you know, we did have, that's kind of come out now with the emergence of Blast and PGL. You've got fans that absolutely fucking rake you over the coals for minor mistakes, or even just don't like your voice. Nothing I can do about it. It's my voice. What about the content of what I'm saying? Nah, I just fucking hate your voice. I hate your voice. I hate your face. Fuck you. Right? I don't think you should be hired. You shouldn't be allowed in this ecosystem. And on top of that, while they talk about, man, Dota's dying, what should we do? How are we going to grow this game? When people from outside come in and go, hey, can I work? Fuck off, you. Fuck off, outsider. Go away. You know, it's insane. It's like, you know, like you're gonna have to grow the population a little bit, guys. You gotta let the normies come and at least peek round the fucking curtain. You can't just spit in their face as soon as they do that. But that's just the Dota community in a nutshell.
They have so much more in common with 4chan than they will ever realize. It's one of the greatest ironies of gaming. I mean, Dota is a very old game, just like Counter-Strike, and we have some deep cuts that go with like internet culture. I mean, there's this really weird irony to me that a lot of people will have you believe that gaming and esports is the most toxic place on the internet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I came out as a cross-dresser in 2020, I actually found that like esports and gaming was one of the nicest places. It was the real world where people gawked at me and made passing comments and made me feel less than. I actually felt okay on Reddit. Yeah, of course, people are taking shots in Twitch chat, but the people that mattered, like when I came out, I actually got more gigs than I did before because people would, like organizers and people that could hire me would say, we can sense your confidence. Like, dude, you talk different now. Like, it seems like you are actually being yourself and it's resonating, you know? And there's like something powerful about that, about being afraid to sort of show your true colors to the world because you don't know how this industry that you work in and care about is going to judge you. And then having the people in the industry that actually write the checks and give you the gigs largely support you and say, hey, that's cool, man. We're not worried about Twitch chat. We know that you're good and it's cool and they're going to have some laughs. If you're good, we're good. That was like really powerful, dude. You know, like Dota Pit in Croatia. I don't associate Croatia with ultra progressive, you know, gender stuff. But when I came out, they were very like, dude, we want to hire you. It's super cool you did that. We stand by you. It's awesome. And they didn't want to make a big PR statement about it, but just to say that in the DMs, you know, that really mattered and carried weight. So there is this weird juxtaposition where while it's like gaming is aggro and vile at times, I wonder how much of that is just competition and the internet and the human condition and not just esports in a vacuum. Because when you separate out that other shit and talk about the real esports people, almost all of them could care less about, oh, dude, you're wearing a dress. Who gives a fuck? You know?
I mean, this is it's a tangent, but it's an interesting one, and I will say that this is part of the problem with the conflation of esports with the general gaming population, which is that, in my opinion, the esports industry, as in the professional industry, has always been very accepting of people. And it's like people will say, like, oh, well, the people on the ladder, the competitive gamers, are being toxic towards X group, or like the fans are saying one thing, but that isn't the esports industry, right? Like you're saying, the people who sign the checks, in my experience and in the experience of basically everybody else that I've ever worked with, as far as industries goes, ours is quite a progressive one.
It was. Before our new overlords arrived.
It's the first half of the episode. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know
Which is why we're pissed, by the
That's
way.
the important thing, guys. If you're really disappointed with the direction the esports industry has gone, understand you have a voice and there are conversations happening and there's progress being made. So don't worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is the thing as well. I mean, like, you know, to tie the two incongruous halves of the show together. I mean, you know, the fans have got to make more noise about this stuff. I think it's kind of staggering to me that I've just come off another fucking Passion of the Richard, 5 days of being publicly flogged in the streets for saying Stewie 2K playing a 0.88 rating proves that he's not good enough for tier 1 CS and probably never will be ever again at the age of 26, right? Which is all just very mild, reasonable analytical statements,
A
right?
pretty cold take, honestly.
They've fucking, you know, been calling the university I work at all sorts of fucked up shit, death threats over that. It's like, guys, where's the energy for the Saudi stuff? Like, how in the Dota community can you let your entire circuit be captured, right, as a sports washing exercise? And literally, if you go and look at the average thread about sports washing in the Dota fans go, yeah, but you know, if the Saudis weren't here, Dota would die, so I don't care. And you go, oh, I mean, like, the Dota fan base is really
It also
comfortable with
wouldn't
it.
die, to be clear. Like, that's the whole thing
Sure.
about, you know, basically, like, esports ain't gonna die, guys, if the Saudis don't come in. Sure, it might go down. We might see lesser production quality, but it certainly can be profitable in a normal ass way, right? It can be. It's just that the stakeholders, basically the stakeholders have to, you know, all of the teams that got all of this investment are expecting a certain valuation. And if they go backwards in that process, then their boards get very angry, right? The boards, the venture capital companies that invested in them, you know, the individual family funds that invested, the Saudi government gets angry at ESL because they just spent $1 billion merging ESL and Face It in order to, you know, maintain value in the industry. So it's not that esports would die if the Saudis went away. It's that, sure, we might have to go back to more grassroots shit, but most of us who are here for the grassroots shit in the first place kind of prefer that, honestly.
By the way, that's
than
also
having
the
a fake ass
dirty
bubble.
That's also the dirty sort of like conceptual game of sleight of hand they're playing. It's always that when they have to take the blood money, they're always Aladdin stealing a loaf of bread for their starving family, which, by the way, ironically, is a great analogy because it's actually about how incredibly harsh the criminal system is in the Middle East in a vague setting. So kind of an applicable case there. But yeah, I agree with you, Monty. They always make it like literally if they don't take this money to they're shuttering the doors of everything and like the whole thing's over. Whereas like the whole reason why you can't ever say that to people on this show is we did, as like when Zyori said they made 30k a year. I had years where I did 80 hours a week and I made, I think, like 11,000 euros a year. And that was without any benefits. I was a freelancer. Like literally, this is like, that's like almost poverty level if people don't understand once you add in all the costs of your insurance and health, all the other shit you have to add in. So like, we already know that you can have esports without these things at a smaller scale. The real problem, and here's the irony of the term progress being thrown around, because there's another one of the nonsense terms in esports, right? Progress is almost as bad as fucking sustainability. I know sustainability just means I need a really big bag. It never means anything has to sustain, which is what the fucking word means. So in the same sense, progress just means things are changing, but I'll infer that always means in a good way. Like, what I don't understand is, you know, progress means it could go backwards, right? Like, it could go in a direction you don't want. So I will say, I think that part is bullshit. So most people, when they complain about this topic, don't really mean Monty, but I'll have to quit and go. What they mean is, I won't be riding a Lamborghini anymore. I'll just be driving a Ford Focus like you or a normal human being, or a pleb mortal, you know?
Or maybe I might have to go get a job that isn't
Yeah.
in video games, which is like part of the patheticness of this is
Yeah.
that people do insane mental gymnastics to maintain their space in this industry because they are deathly afraid of having like they either have kind of wasted their time and that they have not developed any other skills that are applicable to anything outside of their own niche, which is kind of like a personal failing and pathetic in its own right, and just frankly a mismanagement of one's own career. But they don't, they don't want to. It's like, well, I had morals that I was willing to stand up for on social media up until the point where I might have to go find a job that isn't in, I guess,
Literally just had a long
video
interaction
games.
with people at Team Liquid doing the exact same shit. I mean, just a wholesale embarrassing response from a lot of Team Liquid workers. Like some dog shit Twitter account with like 2,000 followers tweeted something like, "I actually think it's like Robin Hood. You're taking from the Saudis
Yeah,
and
it's
they're putting
not.
it into pride
They're
causes."
paying you for a
And-
service, a PR
By the
service.
way, it's also telling that they also went
Team
to like a
Liquid stuff
Disney
like that.
cartoon or something. They just went
Yeah.
Robin Hood instead of Aladdin for that
Yeah.
one. So I guess they're more
Well,
old school than I am.
they scoured all the Harry Potter books for an example,
Right,
but there just
okay.
wasn't one that was applicable, So, anyway, so and it was like that Josie Brown as well, the Hulu executive. This is somebody, by the way, who when we're working at Hulu in the Culture Lab, they're doing videos about Ruth Bader Ginsburg and how she's a feminist icon, someone who absolutely couldn't exist in Saudi Arabian culture. They did a documentary / activist thing where it was like, did you know there's fewer statues of female historical figures in America than there are of men? Well, we're going to change all that. Well, let me
How
tell you
many
about
how many statues of women are there inside?
yeah, let me tell you about a culture that doesn't exactly lionize women. You might have heard of them. They're at the bottom of your fucking pay stub, you fucking moron. And this is what I mean. It's like if you put fucking geographical limitations on your principles, they're just not. And that's the biggest.
My
fucking,
morals are geo-fenced, Richard.
yeah, like literally, like. So hang on, is it okay to say gay rights in this country? Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, I'm fucking more gay rights then, yeah. I'm the most gay
You mean
rights ever.
essentially they operate on the exact thing we use as to why people should get a VPN. It's like in different regions you can access different types of content. It's like,
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, it turns out in different.
Christians apparently, yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
in different
I
regions.
don't want to back. This is funny, but I don't want to backslide into this. I want to talk about the conversation, like reframe it around the caster stuff, because like this stuff isn't going away, and like the reality.
Sure.
If you are thinking about being a caster or currently a caster, if you're currently a caster, you should be getting the fuck out as fast as you can. If you are not a caster and you're trying to be one, what is wrong with you? This isn't a career that actually
Very
has
hard
any
time to
kind
start,
of
actually.
trajectory to it. Because now the best case scenario is basically you are the background noise for a co-streamer, and you spend all your time trying to do this craft, and there's no value. Like, you didn't get the bag. The bag has now exited the building, guys. Like, there isn't a big bag coming. I mean, maybe in 5-10 years there'll be another big bag, but there's no bag on the horizon. You know what I mean?
Maybe
Like
bag, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, basically,
would
it's
say
like you missed the chance. So now what are we doing here? You're just going to continue to take L's. Like, you should be trying to build up your own brand, trying to do other stuff as much as you possibly can, because nobody in this space, none of the publishers, none of the tournament organizers, you will never have equity in these companies. You will never own them. You will never actually have a voice. They will continue to play you off all of the colleagues that you actually liked until the end of time. They will fuck with you. They will cut your rates. And there's nothing you can do about it because all of these things just exist in monopolies now. And even if you think, because here's what's going to come up, guys, Esports World Cup, some casters are going to get paid a lot of money this year. But as soon as that becomes part of the normal circuit, rates are going to go down to your normal rate. And then what's going to happen is just what happened in Dota. They're going to get cut. I'm sure those Dota casters got a good deal the first time they did this, right? And then, oh, we can't do that anymore. Sorry. And because they know now you're dependent on them, you're addicted to the money. That's it. The game's up.
Addicted to the platform, addicted to the audience, really.
Yep.
Don't let people take advantage of your passion. By definition, gamers are passionate, right? We're people that sacrifice real life to live in the digital world. So we have a degree of passion that's just innate with what we enjoy doing. And these people that are professionals in the business world are very inept at reading that and taking advantage of that. And I think it's the number one thing where people get stuck because they love this industry, but you don't have the business skills to say, nope, this is unacceptable. This is how you actually negotiate and fight fire with fire. So often people ask me, like, Zyori, is esports going to die? And I tell them every single time, video games ain't going anywhere, and people's energy for competing with each other ain't going anywhere. As long as those two things are true, esports as a concept is not going to die. The passion that we have for it is still here. The current iteration very well might die a fiery death. That might be okay. Hopefully we're reborn like the Phoenix and come back stronger. But no, is the idea of competitive video games going away? 100% unequivocally not, right? Like, people still have the fuel that drives this whole industry. It's just the current manifestation that has failed, I think.
By the way, one thing I would say, because it's actually one of the only potential like techniques / paths people can take to somewhat offset this problem, is I also think this is why in the modern day, because there isn't job security by definition, you can't just be, I am a full-time caster in this one video game, because then there's so limited amount of options as to who you can hire you that if you have any falling out, or you just happen to get pushed out, or you don't take the deal they want, you're by definition going to have there's going to be nowhere else for you to play. So if you're doing that, one, I would genuinely consider things like try other esports games, see if you can branch out and do like a smaller game or have a second game. Or the other obvious thing is create content, make your own YouTube channel, make something else that exists so that if you don't get hired, because crucially, the dream is that one day you can actually be the person who walks away from the negotiation table and then don't do the event. And then next time they give you the right deal or they don't fuck with your paper as much as the other guy. Well, the problem is if you're just the caster and by not doing this event or not getting hired, you don't appear on camera, you're actually unfortunately playing yourself. You're now not going to be, it's going to be out of sight, out of mind. People aren't going to think of you when you're not at the event. And in fact, the next time they don't hire you, well, they didn't hire you for the one before, so it even becomes a pattern. So I also think it is essential to know, like, essentially understand not your enemy, the person you're negotiating with here, and what the levers for them are. And I do think you need to try and be visible in other contexts than just their broadcast. So I think that's also a key thing, because the point is, if you are either the biggest caster or someone who has like other options like that, you can at least stay in the public consciousness for the next event. You can keep on people's mind. You can be relevant on topics you would have talked about on the event. But I think if you don't do that and you hope that it's like what people thought it would be 10 years ago, and you just work all the events off of one giant TO, that sort of dream has somewhat died. Like, as we see, essentially they exploiting that, as you say, to play everyone against each other, because everyone does want to be at the event. Everyone does what, like, at the end of the day, when you go to the biggest events, it's not even about the money. You just want to be at the event. You want it on your resume. You want to be there in that stadium and see that team win. These are all things they, as you say, because they used to do this gig, they cynically know that part. They're really good at knowing that that's like a lever they can push.
The greatest high I've ever experienced in my life is casting an elimination game in a full arena where my voice is in the fucking arena and I am telling that story, and there are 50,000 people hanging on my every word. I've never experienced a drug or an experience that has surpassed that, right? And these people fucking know that. You guys have brought up Joe Miller a number of times, right? They have people in these key roles that understand the addiction to that dopamine system and use that against you. And that's what you're up against. You know, it's hard as just an individual upstart. You mentioned B Cop. It's hard for B Cop to fight against that because he has passion. He's someone that just wants to be there and wants to have his shot, and everyone on the other side knows that.
Well, right, and it's also that.
But to quickly tie that to the Saudi thing, I even think that's another problem that we run into. We haven't even discussed on that one, which is there's a lot of people who are talent who they desperately want someone to tell them, you're brilliant. You know, what you do is incredible. And we're so glad to have you here. Let's treat you extra special and give you a better dress. And in fact, you know what? You want to meet the prince? He'd love to meet you. He's a big fan. Dude, if there's anyone susceptible to fucking flattery, it's bloody esports talent. Where everyone, like Richard said before, everyone's a massive diva in their own way. Like, that's why there's scales here. So the problem is they can also play on that too. And I'll tell you what, that works. If you do that, that's how people we like Richard end up going, he has a kind face, though, which to me is like, bro, I even like you, and you've just done the George Bush, Putin has like a Christian heart or whatever that fucking weird thing he said like 20 plus years ago. You've even, dude, that works. I know people will think, surely when you're a top cast, you don't think of these. They do. That flattery really works in esports, boys. Really.
It really works. It really works. The first PGL event I worked where they said, hey, Red Eye's here. We got to do the opener show. do you want to be on the opener with Red Eye? Do you want to open the major with Red Eye? I remember when they said that to me in the green room, I was like, would I ever? Oh my God, I'll do it for free. Like, I jumped. I mean, I felt validated. I felt like I made it. I felt like I was in the zeitgeist, you know, like Reddit's gonna love me because I'm gonna be there with Paul and he's gonna make me look good. And you know, whether or not any of that's true is a totally different conversation.
You either take the 10% cut or you better do the opener with fucking Zyori. And he was like,
Yeah.
oh, bloody hell.
Yeah, exactly. They play both sides. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. But my dumb ass was just sitting there like, oh boy, today I made it. Thanks for flying to me to Romania. You guys are so generous. You know, that was what I was thinking in my head. And of course, they're not fucking generous. They're just smart business people. That's it. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But don't confuse it for generosity or some emotional connection. Or they didn't believe in me any more than they believed in anyone else. They just wanted somebody to do the job so they could get paid and we could all move on. It's that simple.
Yeah,
Don't over-index on the emotions.
and this is what keeps the, you know, you might be wondering, well, why did these casters keep doing this when the co-streamers are like 80% of the audience in games like Valorant or like whatever? And the reason is, guys, so there's two reasons. One of which, in my conversations with some of the other casters in games, is that, like you say, it's the rush. You know, sitting at home streaming for 10 hours is way less fun than being in a fucking packed arena where your voice is there and you're interacting with the audience.
Has to be one of the biggest drivers of talent cuts of all time. FOMO, it's the feeling when you're at home and you're just like, fuck, I wish I'd said yes. Look at that. That looks amazing. Oh my God, this match is like, I mean, I think everyone gets that. Everyone who's talent gets that.
Everybody on this call has been in that situation where we're sitting at home because we choose not to do talent stuff anymore. And we're like, fuck, I wish, you know, all of the other bullshit aside that makes this job suck and not worth it. The highs that you were referencing, Zyori, are so insane that you're like, I still kind of miss it though. But you're like, then you remind yourself, oh yeah, the price is too steep for that, right? It's
but
just
to
like,
put it
it's
in
ridiculous.
context, when I did Stockholm 21, remember I've been retired, like I was out, and then you know, they fucking said like, you want to do it? I went, yeah, all right then. Went and did it, and like this is obviously before the Saudi buyout and before Savvy took over ESL, and it was such a fucking buzz. We were all fucking there partying, drinking, and we were like, fuck it, man. Like, do you want to come and do the next season of Pro League? Like, this is great. We're like, yeah, all right, fuck it. We were planning out what we were gonna do, bits, who was gonna do what. Like, it was just a given that I was gonna go and do this thing. I was like, just gonna be fully back in, working the circuit, and I'm gonna go bought by Saudi. I said, no, I can't take that money. And so, you know, it's like, but I was nearly back to doing it regular. And it was something I'd already walked away from once because, like, you know, that fucking, the rush Zyori's talking about being in a crowd and having them react to it. You know, I had it in Copenhagen, you know, just this year. You know, it's fucking, it is like nothing. It's like, you know, I show that to my normie friends. Like, this is what I did. Here's me. Look at this crowd. Look at these fucking insanely high sheets of flame just being shot out. You know, and fucking, and there's just 10 people playing video games down there. And it's like they can't process it. They don't really get it. So it is. And yeah, FOMO is like a big driver of, you know, it gets talent not just to go against their own interests, but also to fuck over their own, you know, their own people that they would probably have been out with many times, at many events with, partied, but limited spaces. So, am I going to undercut you ruthlessly now that you've told me your rate in confidence, or am I going to make up a story about, you know, why maybe you shouldn't be at the event? There's all sorts of sabotage going on. Yeah,
Yeah,
you know?
hit the nail on the head. That feeling of I missed it.
as well. One thing to throw in as well quickly, because you have to mention this, like we have to take blame as talent too. Another thing that sucks about talent is, right, we've already got this massive prisoner's dilemma where we're all trying to simultaneously know what the rates are, but don't ask for too much and also get hired. And am I that? And at the same time, what do people do in the green room? Turn around and gaslight/lie to their own colleague/friend. Yeah, I'm making 1,700 on that event, making 1,400 actually. Oh, so yeah, but probably do 2,000. You should probably ask for this. Like, you also now have to ask, like, how do I even pass what this guy's lying about, self-aggrandizing, fucking giving up? There's also so much like fucking signal noise and bollocks that we all add in ourselves to. You know, go on. What were you saying? Sorry, Terry. What were you saying about?
The energy is really infectious. You know, I kind of stepped out of esports, and then after I got into blockchain gaming, I did this big AxiCon event last year or the year before in September in Barcelona. And it was incredible to be able to bring that esports energy to a new game and a new audience and a new production crew, right? The production crew we hired to do that event had only done business conferences. So on the last day, it was like, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to move this here. They eventually said, how about you just run the show and we'll just follow you and we'll just produce it all live? That sounds way easier. And it gave me this appreciation for part of the magic of esports is how live it is, right? Most broadcast television is insanely produced, insanely rehearsed. Very little of it is live, right? Most of it is hyper edited. Esports has this amazing live energy that's like, for better or for worse, for lack of preparation, we're here, we got the panel, it's 30 minutes of the four of us standing here talking, and you're gonna fucking deal with it. Like, there's some magic to that, though, where we don't have teleprompters, we don't have all this production, rickety racketa. It's just people that give a shit talking about the stuff that they really care about. And that energy is still unique.
But
it's different
that
from regular
energy,
sports.
that energy is a skill, Zyori, that the talent aren't compensated for because they're the ones who are cut. But honestly, talent is more indispensable in esports because there is less production, right? And you are supposed to simultaneously produce hours of live commentary with minimal production around you, minimal framework, and you're supposed to be insightful about the game, funny, cover up for any broadcast mistakes, fill for hours if there are technical difficulties. And you know what? It's not the producers, it's not the full-time employees that ever take the pay cuts. It's always the talent who are carrying these motherfuckers. And like, that's what bothers me too, is that, and you know, it's the producers who are full-time employees that got the bag when the buyout happens. It's not the talent. The talent didn't get a fucking bonus. You know, all of the people working for ESL who are broadcasters, did they get a fat bonus when the buyout happened? No.
Dude,
you know what I mean?
I went through that with fucking DreamHack.
They got a pay cut.
I went through that with DreamHack. I was the host of everything. Every time they needed, like, I've done a Heroes of the fucking Storm event, for fuck's sake. Like, fucking get me out. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just get me the fuck out. Just put me down. It was in Valencia as well. It was the lowest tech we've ever done. Because remember, they didn't even have a fucking pick and ban built into the game. You had to do it through a separate app. I didn't know that going in. I said it on the broadcast, going, that's a bit fucking shit, innit? And Activision Blizzard were mega tilted about it. But anyway, I did all the DreamHack games, you know, all the events, you name it, CS, StarCraft, Heroes of the Storm, anything else they needed, plugged all the gaps. When they got bought by Modern Times Group, and they had that, and you know, they were sold for like, I don't know, 60 million euros or whatever it was. At any point did they come and go, look, there's just a little cash bonus for you. Like, you're not entitled to it. It's just, here you go. You were the face of the product that we've now sold for all this money. We know how hard you worked. So there you go. Just a little, you know, nothing. Few grand. Would have been a really nice gesture. Nah, that never happens. Never happens. In fact, as I would later find out in 2015, first time there is a bump in the road. Oh, you totally cut me loose and sacrificed me on the fucking altar of falsehoods to make it sound like I fucking viciously assaulted someone at one of your events, when in actual fact the converse was true. And witnesses said that, police said that. But because you were getting threatened with a Twitch deal, you fucking literally sold me out. So that's what you're working with. You know, think about it as well. The mad world you're in. One hot mic ends your career. Doesn't end the producer's career. Doesn't end the fucking, you know, doesn't
Audio
end
guy.
the TO's career. Doesn't end them. It went out on their broadcast next to their sponsors. No, it's you. It's you who gets cut loose. So
totally in charge of missing the button that created the hot mic is not the one that gets fired. It's you who said the thing during the hot mic that gets thrown under the bus. But you're exactly right. What you and Monty said, I totally agree with. And my point is, I didn't realize the degree to which that was true until I did this AxiCon event. The producers we hired were just normie folks. They had worked on Biden's campaign trail. They produced an event where Biden was giving a live speech. And they said to me at the end of the last day, we've never seen anything like that, where you just hosted this live stream for 6 hours with no script, no nothing, no anything. You just went out there and just did it. You threw it.
Yeah.
Like I didn't realize that was a special skill until these people that were like, dude, we produced events with the fucking president and we've not seen something like this. That was when it just clicked in my mind.
To be fair,
like,
if they're working with that on a regular basis, just being able to get to the end of a sentence would fucking blow their mind. Probably, you know.
All right, he was a little bit more vibrant than, and he had a little bit more.
Well, Zyori, when I was working on Overwatch League, one of the things that happened was they hired a Super Bowl producer to come as a consultant and give production feedback. And this guy got in a room with me and Doa and was like, we were like, hey, we need some more support in terms of like stats access and like access to tools. And he was like, wait, you don't have that? And he's like, you guys are doing all of this on your own? And he's like, holy shit, you guys are amazing. He then went and just chewed out all of the producers of Overwatch League for being incompetent. And he was like, I can't believe you guys do this. Like, this is a guy who produces one of the most watched television events in the world. And he was like, I cannot believe that the casters are hung out to dry like this.
It was the same thing like week 1 at E-League. When I said, look, if you want to save some money, just get rid of the teleprompter.
I don't need that shit.
Yeah. And they were like, what? No. We'll keep. You're going to need the teleprompter. You are going to need it. So we'll keep it on. Because it's not just a teleprompter. You have to pay a person to fucking run the teleprompter, right?
Of course. Yeah, they have a producer.
You have to pay a person to put the
writers
script into it as well.
Yep.
So, you end up, there's a chain of like 3 employees that like are all being paid specifically on that show. So just having the teleprompter there adds, tens of thousands of dollars to the budget for the show. I said, listen, we can do it like that, but I don't need it. I was forged in the fires of esports events where some dickhead in your ear who you've never even heard of before just whispers going, Phil, please, 6-hour delay, Phil, please. And that's that. Like, I'm just fucking, all right, who are you? Hello, come back. There's no talk back button under your desk. Who are you, sir? Please. And then you just have to talk bollocks for 6 hours to entertain total strangers on the internet.
My first Star Ladder experience.
They're just spamming like,
hello, game. We have issue. You feel I tell you when good. Okay. And like you said, you have no talk back and you're like,
yep. Okay.
Everything sounds good to everyone that's listening. That's the plan. And you just fill for the next 5 minutes and hope that a Dota game shows up. I mean, that was the life back then. No breaks, no nothing, just run with it. Blind. That's it.
I mean, that was the irony, like, because it happened to us with Gfinity, who were a new TO, and they hired, like, me, Duncan, and Scoots, and we were all going to work the show together. Basically, we, in the end, we managed to make the desk segment into this, like, banter, essentially sort of a podcast in the middle of a show, because the first event we did for Gfinity, we basically bailed them out, because there were so many delays, so many problems, they talked a good game, but they just didn't know the realities of the event before, and then they realized that was like something that they could market to make their show a little bit different, and that was how the Gfinity's Angels got started. And listen, I won't toot my own horn, but I think between us, I think we all did change the way people approach desks in the CS space. But that was almost like a happy accident. If the show hadn't have been so bad, if we weren't having to fucking fill all of the time, that would never have happened. Probably we would never have had the kind of carte blanche to do it. So, sometimes these things do work out for the best.
Yeah, same deal. We were like, Dota is just a bunch of dudes agreeing with each other on trying to be more right than each other. This is the worst content ever. Let's just start a studio where we all are on all the time and just get in the habit of making jokes. If we cross the line, we'll apologize. But let's just make some conversation that's fucking interesting. Nobody gives a shit about your ego or who's smarter. Let's make people laugh. And in 2017, that was like a crazy thesis. Hey, let's not be serious and just say funny things that entertain people. Nobody in Dota was doing it. That was a niche for us to start a business on. That's how serious people were.
By the way, one thing you're actually getting at here, though, ties back into the caster discussion. Like, in the same way as there is no sort of meritocratic system to know who is the best caster, there's no, like, MMR score, there's no game result, there's no scoreboard, anything. Well, not only is there that, but there's also a conceit, which I think by now people have sort of started to turn on, but it takes broadcast a long time to figure this out. Like, I can tell you, Zyori, in CSGO, when it was called CSGO, CS2 now, a lot of the newer broadcast talent are still to this day gaslit by Reddit and fans that all they want on analyst desks and commentary is the most insanely in-depth tactical analysis, as though you actually were playing, like, if everyone remembers the original Rainbow Six games, where you actually would, like, plan out a whole tac mission and you had to do all perfect. They act like that's what they want, right? But the real joke of all is, not only did I never do that, but the reason why I was actually very popular is I just treated it like it was entertainment. entertainment. It was just
Yeah.
about what's funny, what gets you to the next segment, what gets you past the little issue on the broadcast. And I hope people do realize that another thing that sucks about the job, at least in Counter-Strike, I can tell you, is people do early on think the way I'm going to get better gigs and get onto the major, for example, is I need to grind those demos even harder. I need to have an even better analytical point about that smoke. And it's like, bro, no one can even tell you literally one round ever in Counter-Strike history that Yanko broke down that was awesome about a smoke execute. They could tell you 50 times I said some stupid / inappropriate shit. Like, there's a reason why one of those sticks and the other one, even though it's actually more valuable, just went to into the ether, into the wind, as it were. So yeah. I also think, sadly, there's another reason why those people are sort of trapped in a fucked up scenario, because they think that what they're supposed to do their job better, to get better incentives, will help them. But actually, I don't think it does. Like, quite frankly, there's people, I won't say the name of them, I don't think are good on broadcast, but I'll tell you what, they're popular. People enjoy them. There's something about their demeanor people vibe with. And it doesn't matter that to me they're talking bollocks. The other guy's rapt attention. He thinks that it's really funny what they're saying, or they're making a cool point or something. So that kind of also is the gig. And we're all doing this weird thing where schizophrenically we're acting like, no, I'm a very serious analyst of the game and the new meta. It's like, are we really though? Are we really doing that? You know?
Yeah. Fans don't
One
want
example
analytical
DOTA
content.
has, right? Of a broadcast talent who's actually gone on to work for Valve. Who was it? You guys know. It's fucking Bruno, right?
Yeah.
What was
Well, Casey
one of
too.
Bruno's
Casey is
most
now a Valve employee
iconic-
too, right?
Well, Casey as well. But what was one of Bruno's most iconic content bits ever? The no legs strat, right? Absolutely based in zero real analysis, completely a meme, but this team is winning because they've drafted heroes that have no legs, right? That was one of the greatest memes that I remember. I think it was TI3, right? Really OG. It makes the point that you're talking about, Duncan, is this idea of people just want to be entertained, and they remember jokes that are really good. They remember bits, they remember memes. They don't remember specific analysis. And it's just so funny that people don't embrace that. And the one person that did that so well was the one that ascended to the gods.
Yeah. I mean, look, I've been in league for years. It doesn't matter how many analytic points I make. I'm still train whistle guy. That's it. That's what people remember.
Yeah. Or that time you were just dressed up as a devil. That's another iconic moment.
That was a fun one.
Evil MonteCristo. I see that in my fucking nightmares, mate. Like when I have to get up in the morning to record an episode of fucking Foreplay and I'm hungover, that's all I'm gonna see Monty's red face now. Like, but yeah, so look, I mean, listen, I'm gonna be working some DOTA almost certainly soon, so I'm gonna try and fucking shake some shit up when I do. But it just
no card. Richard Lewis coming back before Zyori to do a DOTA tournament. Well done, mate. Congratulations.
There you go. I'll be thinking of you, mate. I'll be like, what would Zyori do? I definitely don't have your figure, so I won't be wearing a dress. But it's going to be interesting because it's like I watch a lot of DOTA. Like DOTA's my main game now. I would probably say in terms of playing it. I don't play CS quite famously anymore. I watch it all religiously, but I don't play it. But I watch a lot of DOTA as well and play it. And I do think, much like what had happened a little bit with CS, I think the death segments have kind of stagnated, and I think that's where people go and get a cup of tea and turn off. And I don't want that to be the case. I want the deaths to be something that you actually stick around for because you want to know what crazy shit is going to happen, you know. And much like Too Good, when I fucking came up, you know, with him, and he was ahead of me in the pecking order, and I was watching what he was doing. He was somebody that I thought, yeah, you know, he gets it too. It's just like, just make it entertaining. Like, take some risks, make it entertaining, push the envelope as far as you can. I will not push it as far as maybe he did in Shanghai, but you know, we'll see what we can do. And you know, like, it's an entertainment product. No matter what the average fan, the fan is a liar. The fan is a liar. The fan will simultaneously tell you all they care about is analytical content, and they are more qualified than you to know what is good, what is bad. It's like, no, I'm a fan too, and on top of that, I've got this experience, and I've been deemed good enough to work in the space. I'll drive this conversation. Thank you very much. Not you. You can watch, or you can
Richard
not
Lewis
watch.
Jenkins panel. I'm ready for this. I want to see
Right?
the RL Jenkins duo. You know, like, I lived with Jenkins for a couple months. He is a crazy motherfucker. I love the guy.
I love
He's
that guy.
insane. I love the energy he brings on camera. I honestly, watching Jenkins on camera makes me wish I had stuck around in DOTA a little longer, because if I knew that guy was going to become tier 1 talent, we could have had so much fucking fun together. I
Working
honestly wasn't
working
sure
with
if
him
I
and
could
Slacks
make
is
it.
back on the bucket list, like, because I've obviously, and I've never met Jenkins, but I know Slacks. We talk on and off, and but we haven't done an event together, and it's like, these are things. There are still people out there in the esports talent pool that I'd like to work with before I get to doing something else with my life.
Fun
I
fact.
would opposite. I'd actually like to have not worked with some esports talent. I just don't have a time machine, so nothing I can do that way. So,
Fun
That's
fact.
it. That's it.
As we wrap this up, I will just drop this non sequitur in there. Slacks actually invited himself to my wedding, which was hilarious.
Awesome.
So
I know about this one.
it was great. He was great to have there. Don't get me wrong. Like, it was really fun, but it was funny because, like, I was getting married in Denver and we did the whole esports mystery thing. And he contacted me because he lives in Denver. Was like, can I come? Like, sure.
That's fucking
But
rad. Yeah.
Like, for sure. He's got that energy to pull that off just completely confidently. Like, bro, I'm coming to this esports wedding. You're going to want to have me here. I'll see you soon.
I
See
did. It
ya.
was great.
And then that's it. Yeah.
Actually, I'll give you one anecdote about Monty's wedding because I've never told this one before. It's an interesting. In fact, Monty doesn't even know it. So when I
Uh-oh.
went to Monty's wedding, I walked in the door. Right, it's like the full reception, everything. And when I
Yeah.
walked in, there was this massive queue where you queue up to put your coat in like the cloakroom. Right, you just wait when you come in. Obviously, Denver's quite cold. I can't remember what time of year was it, Monty? Was it like the end
November.
of the year? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's quite chilly, And then
Yeah,
as
yeah.
we're all stood in this queue, and I'm almost at the front of this queue, Mike Morheim of Blizzard just walks in. Acts like there isn't a queue, just walks right to the front and just puts his coat in ahead of me. And I thought, what a brilliant metaphor for the esports industry.
Yeah, that is perfect.
That's too funny. All right. So anyway, about the Dota caster rate stuff, I think it is important that you highlighted this, Richard. And it's just like, I think people, the reason why I wanted to put this in here is because Zyori and I have had the conversations in the past where we've talked about, caster rates. Zyori and I were trying to actually get casters to do something collectively at one point in time, but it's just impossible. Like, you can't get them to not even unionize, but like hold the line together. It's actually extremely sad. And when you don't hold the line, it just backslides, right? Everything just backslides. I've had at times colleagues that have been very good at holding the line, like within a broadcast or a game with me. That obviously happened at OGN and was very effective. Speaking of boycotts, like, we actually did, Papa Smithy Doe and I won the boycott battle with Riot when we boycotted MSI because of rates.
Yeah.
Like, that actually fundamentally changed how much everybody was being paid in League of Legends. So for all you people on our earlier conversation saying boycotts don't work, they definitely do. They definitely can. As long as you message it properly and you do it together. But, doing it in isolation, probably not going to be very effective. But I mean, this is a really big point. And as we move forward for casters, you guys need to figure your shit out, because this isn't a sustainable lifestyle for you, not because you don't deserve to get paid, as we've been over, but because the more monopolies there are, the less reason they have to pay you. There is no competition. Like, even, and as soon as these monopolies exist, like, CS casters still generally get paid well because there are other entities in the space. But it's not because ESL or Blast want to pay you well. Here's another bomb for you guys. Blast actually in Rainbow Six, when they took over the Rainbow Six circuit, got the monopoly there, they have made it so all casters get paid the same rate, no matter how experienced they are, which is fucking wild. So, I mean, these are like really big issues, because then why would you do a good job? Right?
Well,
Why
yeah.
would you try and be better? Why would you make additional
Also,
content to like
imagine-
make your personal brand bigger?
Imagine being the top, and then you're getting right,
And you get a pay
Like,
cut.
well, yeah. Like, what the fuck?
And you're told, I'm getting paid the same as these other people, even if you've been there for longer, even if your brand is bigger, even if you do more work out, on your own stuff. So this is the reality of the situation. And it, like, Blast did that so that they could stabilize their own costs. And they were allowed to do that in this space because they were given a monopoly over the circuit effectively. But this has happened with Riot. It's happening with ESL. When they have the power to do it, like with Dota, and it will continue to happen. The more we cede all of the production over to the Saudi-owned entities, the only result of this is, on the casting side, is that your life gets worse. Like, not even the moral stuff, just like your career gets worse.
I feel like the part that people are going to miss is this, and unfortunately, this is where talent again do think they're the rock star. You're going to think naively, no, but think about the earlier conversation, Thorin, about sports washing. All the big celebrities like Ronaldo and all these famous people, they're getting paid mega money. Yeah, you ain't Ronaldo. We just explained
You're not getting it.
you don't have the leverage that the player. Look, the player will always make fucking mad money. The team orgs might get their cut of the money. As the talent, the second the Saudis have their monopoly, by the way, they're going to slash the rates. What are you talking about? That's how they're going to pay for everything.
Phrasing.
I mean, I would even say this. Just look at that story about the Qatar thing. How did it work out for the people building the stadiums for the World Cup? Wasn't so great, was it? Well, that was the only game in town. So again, I also think, by the way, the two conversations tie together. And in the future, if the Saudis indeed end up owning a whole circuit, they're going to make the rates go to nothing. And spoiler, you're not speaking out about shit anyway, so you're not going to say anything. People are going to be even less likely to come and flex like public opinions like they did in open circuits like DOTA and say yes.
Well, it's also that this is where they can actually save money because they have a monopoly. Like if they're trying to slash producers' rates, they can just go work in television or film or wherever. Like a camera operator is a camera operator, and you can be in a union in LA and like just work on other gigs. Or producers do many different kinds of live content. They can go back to sports. If you are a caster, that's what they say. Oh, well, why don't you just go cast another game? It is insanely hard to just pick up another game. Right? Insanely hard. So some of the hosts and stuff have more versatility. People like Shocks who come in and do League of Legends and then they go do a CS major, or Golden Boy, or some of these people. Richard, what you've done in your career, right? I've done a little bit of it, but not a lot. But it has been something where it's like but if the Saudis own everything, then where do you go? Because that's their goal. That's why they have all the devs now at their beck and call. They have them all. And like, they'll just start taking over the entirety of multiple circuits and multiple games. So even if you're a host, like imagine if you say no to the Esports World Cup as a host, you could literally live in Riyadh 2 months a year, get paid like $100,000 for those 2 months, and just do every event. That's a huge thing to turn down.
Well, at least there's going to be at least we have an independent media that will in esports that will highlight these issues. And also, as the other good news is, at least you'll always be able to grind away and win recognition by winning awards without it being influenced by anyone. So, eventually.
It's so dark, isn't it?
Yeah,
if you are part of the LGBTQ community or a woman and you have problems, there's a lot of activist groups you can go to and talk to who'll support your cause and wouldn't side with us. Oh shit, yeah, my bad.
Yeah. So it really is. I mean, like, by the way, I want to just, and I'll end it here and then we can wrap up the show. But I just want to say, I did say at the start of this, when they bought Savvy, I did say, I know how Saudi operate. I've seen them buy up a few other sports. They are going to come for everything. And it's not just going to be a tournament circuit. It's not just going to be a few events in Riyadh. It's going to be, they want to own the orgs in some way and influence them. They're going to want to have their own national org, essentially, which is what Falcons has gone into.
They want you to boot camp there, probably relocate there eventually, right? Everything,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're gonna ask that you spend time out there. They're gonna buy up at the media to stop any dissenting voice. They're gonna.
The Rolling Stone thing. If people don't know, they just bought Rolling Stone Vertical that they're going to do a similar thing with. Yep.
They're going to buy or at least invest in heavily games development companies. They want total control of it all because the purposes of this is not just to create an ecosystem that they can give like cool jobs to all their, young populace and all of that stuff. It's super easy, isn't it? If you can just control the ecosystem from the top down and just put people wherever you want them, wherever they need them. Make sure you've got guaranteed offices in your country. But obviously on top of that, it's the messaging. And there's no brakes on Saudi investment until 2030. By 2030, they want to be controlling as many things outside of oil as possible. And also in developing news, that's kind of not relevant, but still an interesting fact. obviously today the petrodollar agreement that the
Oh,
US
sure.
government had with Saudi
Yep.
Arabia
Yep.
has lapsed. So they're now selling oil in every currency under the sun and not just the petrodollar. Sorry if you're American. Once again, the good guys, the adults that are back in charge, have tanked your fucking dollar into oblivion. But, no more mean tweets, so you get what you vote for. And obviously as well, yeah, I mean, Saudi Arabia have now got even more spending power, more international leverage than they've ever had. I mean, they've won. Understand that all of our objections and protestations and all of it's all for nothing. It's just sound and fury. They've won. They get what they want because lesser people are going to give it to them for money.
I just realized how dark it also is that in the future there could actually
Yeah.
be a Saudi developed esports game where only in certain geolocations you can pick any gender you want, but magically in their own. There's only the original. Well, the joke is you can only play as a man because if you pick woman, you automatically get reported to the police. And then they obviously immediately arrest you, don't they, at that point in time? And
mean-
obviously you'll have to have someone drive you to the police station. So,
Blizzard and
taking it all together.
Blizzard and Riot were kind of already doing that with
True.
selling
True.
LG, rainbow pride avatars
yeah.
and stuff like that, which you physically can't use in
Yep.
Turkey, for example. And Activision Blizzard came out and said, we did that for a safety reason because what if somebody used it and then they got reported to the police? That's why we did it.
That by the way, statements like that, like I said earlier, is what I, in a way, in a fucked up, perverse way, I love, because you're saying the quiet part out loud, bro. What do you mean? Like they could get in trouble? What? That means you shouldn't be doing it. That little voice telling you cynically, like, I'd advise my client not to. That should be your conscience, you prick, not some like wanker lawyer. Like, here's how you get out of this, mate. Like, why? Here's the problem with esports. I have a little voice in my head. That's my conscience that tells me what not to do. They're all just using like Better Call Saul to get rizzle dizzle out with the shit they want to do.
Yep, totally.
Yeah, I would tell people that professional manipulators are better at this shit than you could ever imagine. Like this notion of moving the goalposts, right? Humans in general aren't very good at noticing very small incremental changes, right? A minority of the population played World of Warcraft and really understands what 1% every day compounding actually means. But the powers to be that think long, Saudi Arabia, China, they have these 50, 100-year plans. They're thinking long and they're not trying to change the world tomorrow, right? But moving the goalpost 1% every day actually adds up to moving that goalpost a fucking mile on a relatively short time horizon. And to me, that's like the core mechanism here that humans in general are bad at. Esports is just another manifestation of it. But I would implore everyone listening to just keep that in the back of your mind, that like moving the goalpost is one of the greatest manipulation ploys ever to exist in humanity. And these little incremental changes that feel non-existent in a one-off vacuum do add up in aggregate to represent like big changes in the way we operate or the way we do things. And that's kind of what sports washing is all about. So sometimes these conversations get super like nuanced and bogged down and stuck in the weeds. And to me, it's really just about people smarter than you are moving the goalposts. And if you just get caught up in the minutia of right now, dude, you're playing right into their hand and you don't even know it. And that sounds maybe conspiratorial, but
No.
I really think
it's not. This whole thing it's been done. We've seen it before with these exact same actors in different analogous sports industries. Like everybody knows what the game is at this point in time. And it's like, congrats, guys. Now they just own everything. Like everyone is compromised. The employees of the developers can't say anything. The employees of the teams can't say anything. It's like the tournament organizers can't say anything. So what is there left? It's like this fucking show. And even then, like we've said this before, the more we criticize, this is a country that actually kills journalists, guys. The more we sound the alarm on this, like I'm not trying to say we're in physical danger because I know we're not, but like the risk isn't zero here, right, guys? It's not zero. And certainly like it precludes us ever going to Saudi Arabia. Like appearing on this show is the end of that forever now.
I mean, I was already good. I was fine. I do just want it on the record. Like, look, does look nice.
Listen, I've said many times, I keep it real. I've done my events in China. It's all good. It's all. I've been there a few times. I've seen it. Got the t-shirt. Don't worry about that. You won't catch me back there again. Don't worry about it. It's all good.
Exactly the same. Exactly the same.
Sure.
Been
Been
three
there.
times. I'm glad I got to see it. I'm good.
Been there, got the t-shirts from
Still got my head.
Yeah, exactly. Got the t-shirt from the Xinjiang Autonomous Region.
There you
Yeah.
go.
But anyway, thanks to Zyori for coming
Yeah,
on the show. It's
absolutely.
been great. Super
Yeah,
good.
good
I
to
know
catch
this
up.
has been kind of two different conversations, but they are linked together by the same financial powers that be. Some of you guys might be tired of this topic yet, but unfortunately, the only thing we can do while this happens is continue to try and ring the bell over and 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 over again, to see if there is a meaningful change that can be effected.
Well,
So
next week we've got an even spicier episode where we look at a player that maybe didn't perform all that well at a tournament and sort of say he didn't perform all that well at the tournament. So obviously, knives out for that one. Yeah, let's go fuck it. That's going to be a big one. But for now, we're just talking about the total takeover of esports by a fucking government regime that would murder and execute women's rights activists and gay people. So you can all go back to bed, I guess. Fucking
it is
fans.
it is the black pill, isn't it? All right, guys, thank you very much. If you guys are wondering, obviously, so in the future we will have to talk about the Esports Awards stuff. We also have to finish up our shows on the EG files, so those will come
Yeah,
to
I forgot
you.
about those. Kind of all seems so quaint now, doesn't it?
It does
The
now,
EG
doesn't
files.
it?
Yeah.
Let's put that one on the back burner for a little bit. We haven't even gotten to the bad part yet. In fact, the EG files, if you guys didn't know, has been kind of like the good parts of EG so far, just doing the history. Haven't even gotten into the scandal that occurred yet. But we will. We will. So anyway, guys, thank you for Zyori for coming on. Obviously, very few people in the industry can talk about this. Zyori, I think you did it very eloquently. So thanks a lot. And until next time, as always, esports, the Lenda Est.